Chapter 2269. The moment this black ball shot out, Dustless aimed at Rom and launched his powerful ability again. 10,000 Mammoth Heaven Summoning. Roswald's attention has always been focused on the black, truth-seeking ball. This black ball seems harmless to humans and animals, but it gives him a feeling of danger and unusual uneasiness, so Roswald neglected his control of Rom, causing her to fly over at once. Damn it. Seeing this, Roswald cursed and hurriedly rushed to Rom. Even if he died, he wanted to drag her down with him. Boom, boom, boom. However, the idea is often beautiful, but the reality is very cruel. Before he got close to Rom, Roswald was blasted by the black ball, and his body exploded in an instant, and even the residue was inexplicably evaporated without leaving any residue. What a miserable ending, but he disappeared without a trace. Consider yourself lucky. If there was a corpse left behind, I will definitely let you see what horror is. Ilusa said with a bloodthirsty look on her face. She also hated Roswald very much. After all, she was killed once. If it weren't for Dustless, she would have died a long time ago. No matter what, this guy is dead. You two should get over it. My condolences. Staring at the two sisters, Dustless persuaded, "You are still very young." On the contrary, Roswald is an old monster of more than 400 years old. Of course, I am not qualified to talk about him because I am much older than him. Anyway, your future life will be better. You may have lived for Roswald in the past, but from now on, you will live for yourself. But sister is sick, she has been. I know Rom's problem, leave it to me. Dustless interrupted Rom directly and said with a smile, I know that Rom's horn is broken, and she needs others to replenish her magic power. This is a small problem, don't worry. Yes. Rom also nodded slightly. She didn't deny such a private issue. She had already regarded Dustless as one of her own in her heart. Although I can't help you replenish your magic power, but... At this point, Dustless paused and said calmly, however, I can make Rom's broken horn condense again. This kind of thing can be done? Lam sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this. He had long since known that Dustless was omnipotent, but he hadn't expected him to be this powerful. Even things like regrowing severed limbs could be done. This is nothing. My internal organs were destroyed by Roswald, but Sir still saved me. Thinking of Dustless's ability, Ilusa was extremely fanatical and her eyes were full of worship, like a crazy believer. By the way, Amelia. Dustless suddenly looked at Amelia. Seeing the bright smile on her face, he asked curiously, is there something you're happy about? Of course, the scourge Roswald is gone, and Rem and Rom are liberated. I'm naturally happy. Tilting her head, Amelia innocently said, after all, the hungry wolf hiding in the dark has been eradicated. Oh you. Rubbing Amelia's little head, the girl was stunned and quickly lowered her head. A strange electric current flashed through her body, and she inexplicably became nervous. Her pretty face was flushed, and her heart was beating faster as if it was about to jump out of her chest. But no matter how complicated her emotions were, Amelia didn't feel annoyed. On the contrary, she was secretly happy and enjoyed it. All this time, no one dared to approach her easily. If you have the time to worry about others, why don't you worry about yourself? Dustless let out a long sigh and immediately withdrew his right hand. Amelia's eyes suddenly dimmed. I've already withdrawn from the king's selection. Is there anything else? Amelia was puzzled and temporarily suppressed her complicated thoughts. Those people from the Demonist sect are after you. Dustless didn't hide anything and told her everything. When Rem and I were on our way back, we came across a village. All the villagers were killed by the witch cult. But what does this have to do with me? Amelia was confused. Of course it does, and it has a lot to do with it. Dustless took a deep look at Amelia and said, those lackeys want to use you as a vessel to revive the Witch of Jealousy. So you are their target. Witch of Jealousy. Amelia's body violently trembled when she heard this name. Soon after, she bitterly smiled and said, use me as a vessel? Is it really the same as what those people who mocked and hated me said? Am I really the reincarnation of the Witch of Jealousy? Don't let your imagination run wild. You are Amelia, the only one in the world. Dustless comforted her in a gentle voice. Soon after, he exhorted, it's best that you don't move around in the next few days. Just stay by my side at all times. Even if they are unhappy, they can only stare. I understand. Amelia gently nodded when she heard this. Soon after, her pretty face turned red as she submissively asked, do I have to sleep with you? Little girl, when did you start to let your imagination run wild? Dustless was quite surprised by such a question, but he still answered truthfully, This is not necessary at all. In fact, as long as you don't leave this house, there will be no problem. Those clowns from the witch cult won't dare to invade. Last time they taught that guy a heavy lesson. And my observation hockey has been locked around, and any movement in the wind can't escape my eyes. Immediately afterward, he said a few more important things to Amelia, and then Dustless left to help Rem treat her horn. This kind of incurable disease was a small problem for Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2270. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the next morning. Without the scourge of Roswald, this huge villa had a lot more vitality. God gave them face and revealed a bright sunny day. Speaking of which, if you rest lazily like this, Miss Kurth might not be able to hold on and be defeated by the other candidates. You think too much. That little girl isn't as fragile as you think. She's very strong, just like a willow branch in the cold winter. Even if she only swings with the wind, as long as the spring breeze blows, she will seize the opportunity to revive a withered tree. Dustless was full of confidence in Kurth, and it wasn't difficult to see that he admired her. Praising another girl in front of another girl, this kind of behavior, is very impolite and makes people feel uncomfortable. I feel like I'm being ignored by everyone. Wuxian. Amelia pouted her red and moist lips in dissatisfaction. Amelia was extremely dissatisfied. Is that so? Dustless rolled his eyes and said snappily, I still vaguely remember that you decisively betrayed me and agreed to my marriage with Kurth. Isn't that for your own good? Isn't it great to get a beautiful wife for you? You took advantage of me and still acted like you're innocent, Amelia said righteously, not feeling that she had done anything wrong. Dustless didn't say anything. Being unreasonable was a woman's characteristic, and there was no need to argue with her. Speaking of which, how is Rom? Amelia said worriedly when she thought of Rom's condition. Lady Amelia, don't worry. Sister is fine. Rem, who was wearing a maid's outfit, walked over slowly with a steaming hot morning tea in her hand. She looked at Dustless gratefully and said, the horns on Sister's head can grow again. After saying that, Rem bowed to Dustless gratefully. You're welcome. This is a small problem. Dustless waved his hand and said calmly, it's not a big problem. It just took some time. Took some time? Hearing this, Amelia's face darkened and the corner of her mouth twitched. Dustless's words made it sound like it was a trivial matter. By the way. Suddenly remembering something, Amelia looked at Dustless and said, Roswald is dead, there is no point for us to stay here, do you want to go together? Amelia's words came to an abrupt halt as she looked at Dustless. Dustless put down the cup of hot tea in his hand, his eyes flashing with a cold light. Dustless Cohen, did something happen? Rem also looked at Dustless in confusion and guessed, could it be that something happened to Miss Kirst? That's not it. That woman isn't that weak. Dustless shook his head and coldly said, it's just that we've been targeted by a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. They really overestimated themselves. Under the perception of Kenbun Shoku observation, Haki, Dustless clearly felt that there were many strange figures around the villa, all of them were witch followers, and they were densely packed in a large area. These guys still don't want to give up? Hearing Dustless's words, Lam and Amelia both moved closer to the window and looked down. Groups of witch cult members were invading, and there was no end to them. Give up? They will never give up easily if we don't destroy these guys. Dustless explained, the people of which religion intend to resurrect the Witch of Jealousy. If you want them to give up, you either have to hand over Amelia, the test vessel, or... Dustless's tone paused slightly and said fiercely, burn these fools with fire, but my last plan seems to have failed. Raising his head to look at the sky, he saw a figure rapidly flying over from the distant horizon. This person had green hair, and his eyes were sunken, without any emotion. He looked extremely sinister, and the skin all over his body was withered, as if all the blood in his body had been sucked out, leaving behind only an empty shell. Petruchius, this guy is here again. How long has it been? Didn't he die for the crime of sloth? Is there a mistake? How long has it been since the last time? Why is he here again so soon? Does he need to be so diligent? Dustless muttered to himself. The plan failed? What plan? Amelia looked at Dustless in confusion, and so did Remington. Although he heard Dustless mention it last time, he didn't know what it was. Petruchius. Although this guy's strength is average, his ability is a bit tricky. Even if I kill him now, this guy can still be resurrected. Dustless explained slowly. He knew Petruchius very well. Why? Amelia asked curiously. Because this guy is more troublesome than I thought. While he died for the crime of being a member of the witch sect, he has another side that no one knows. He is an elf. His name is Hughes and he is an extremely evil elf with the nature of possession. Do you understand now? Dustless said slowly. An elf with the nature of possession? Amelia was shocked and asked subconsciously, does that mean he can possess other people's bodies? Yes, it is indeed such an evil creature. Dustless nodded gently upon hearing that and calmly explained, Bertruccius can carry out unilateral possession. He chose a group of fingers as a vessel for his clones and left, invisible hand, in these people's bodies. Even if I kill him, this guy can break out of his cocoon and be reborn. Dustless explained. Although Bertruccius seemed crazy and arrogant, this guy was actually very careful and could even be considered as a scheming old fox. Keek keek. Before landing on the ground, a gloomy sound came from his throat. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2271. That's right. It is indeed this evil creature. Dustless nodded gently and explained calmly, Bertruccius can possess a body unilaterally. He chose a group of fingers as a container for his doppelgangers and left, invisible hand, in their bodies. Even if I kill him, this guy can break out of his cocoon and be reborn. Dustless explained. Although Bertruccius looked crazy and arrogant, this guy was actually very cautious and could even be said to be astute. Keek keek. Before landing on the ground, a gloomy voice came out from his throat. Bertruccius was valiant and high-spirited as he looked down at Dustless from above. Looking up, Bertruccius was standing in the sky. His gaze swept across several people one by one. When it fell on Amelia, a hint of covetousness and fanaticism flashed in his eyes. When he saw Dustless, his face was full of bad luck as if he had encountered a jinx. Really? Am I that annoying? The difference between your expression before and after is too big. Dustless couldn't help but roll his eyes. He immediately looked at Bertruccius and said coldly, Are you going to kill yourself or do I have to kill you myself? You damn heretic. Don't be so sure of your words. Let me tell you, the troops I brought this time are 10 times more than the last time. Bertruccius was full of confidence. He stood in the sky and looked very domineering. Countless large black hands were dragging his body. It was just that Dustless and others couldn't see it. Is that so? There are quite a lot of them, but... Dustless's eyes suddenly narrowed and he sneered, In the face of absolute strength, what can numbers do? What can it change? You brought so many people with you. In fact, this is just to cover up your own weakness. I originally planned to let you live for a few days, but since the plan failed, you will die here today. As for those fingers of yours, you can slowly kill them one by one. Bertruccius had left the flying thunder god warlock on his body. As long as he met with his fingers, Dustless would immediately appear and eliminate them. In this way he would be able to rest in peace. However, it had only been a few days and Bertruccius hadn't even met with his subordinates yet, and this guy couldn't wait to knock on his door. Perhaps he naively thought that he could crush Dustless with a sea of people. Rem, Amelia, the two of you should take Ram and leave. The further the better. This kind of villa will no longer exist. Dustless gave the two girls a serious look, then urged them to leave. Keek keek. Hearing that, Bertruccius sneered and said in disdain, Now that things have come to this, you still want to play the hero saving the damsel in distress? You're bored to death. You'd better think about how to save your lives. We understand. Rem and Amelia looked at each other. They also understood that they would only be a burden to Dustless if they stayed, so they left tactfully. Before they left, they only asked him to be careful with Bertruccius. No. This isn't a hero saving the damsel in distress. I'm not interested in that kind of child's play. If I'm interested in something, I'll just snatch it. Dustless sneered and said, The supreme power can dominate everything. Ethan, I like your words. Bertruccius nodded repeatedly, then he started to bite his fingers in an extremely perverted manner. Creak, creak, creak. If you didn't insult Lady Witch, you might have a great destiny with my sect. Bertruccius had a look of pity on his face, then his expression suddenly changed. He looked at Dustless with a murderous look. What a pity. You damned guy insulted Lady Witch, so you must die here. Then I'm really sorry. The person who will die here won't be me but you. Dustless faced Bertruccius' vicious gaze, but his expression did not change. Also, you seem to have misunderstood something. I asked Amelia and the rest to run far away. I'm not a hero saving the damsel in distress. Bang. At that moment, the glass in front of Dustless suddenly shattered, and his body slowly flew into the sky. He stood in the void and looked at Bertruccius calmly. I can't deny that you brought too many minions with you this time. You need a large-scale killing move. If that happens, this villa will be turned into ruins. I asked them to leave. I'm just afraid that the aftershock will destroy them. After all, with their level, they're still far from being able to withstand that move. Looking at the countless Demonist sect members below, they were densely packed together like a swarm of ants, covering the entire ground. Tremble, ants. Dustless's left eye suddenly changed. The black pupil disappeared and was replaced by a scarlet Rinsei Sharingan. He hugged the vast sky with both hands, and an extremely terrifying wave of destruction was brewing in his body. Gulp. Looking into Dustless' eyes, Bertruccius suddenly had a bad feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Super Shinra Tensei. A shockwave visible to the naked eye suddenly erupted from Wu Chen's body. The moment it flashed, it spread out without limit. In the blink of an eye, the entire manor was burned down. The terrifying repulsive force crushed everything like dry weeds and smashed rotten wood. The most terrifying thing was that Ross's villa completely disappeared, and an unprecedented super crater appeared on the ground as if it was hit by a meteorite. It made one's soul tremble. Can a human make such a terrifying attack? It was worth mentioning that the countless witch disciples disappeared without a trace. The sky was blue, and even the remains of their bodies were not left. It was as if they had evaporated into thin air. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2272. What have you done? What have you done with my lovely disciple? Hand them over to me now. After being stunned for a moment, Bertruccius actually screamed and cried bitterly. In the end, his face was covered in tears. Idiot, has your brain been damaged by the aftermath of the Super Shinra Tensei? We are enemies. Since we are enemies, we will naturally fight to the death. Dustless looked at Bertruccius quietly. As this guy was standing in the sky with the help of the big black hand, he avoided the impact of the Super Shinra Tensei, and was lucky enough to escape with his life. Ah! Ow ow ow! The heart-wrenching cry resounded through the blue sky and the world was silent. Only Dustless looked at Bertruccius silently. His group of followers had all been turned into ashes. I want you to die with me. Bertruccius's face was trembling with anger. Originally, he wanted to capture Amelia alive and kill Dustless while he was at it, but who would have thought that this guy would counterattack? The people who should have been killed were all fine, but his own people were all wiped out. Bertruccius was also pitifully reduced to a commander without an army. Go to hell. With a wave of his hand, a large amount of black fog erupted from behind Bertruccius. Countless purple-black hands swept out of the fog and slapped the lazy Dustless in unison. Bang bang bang. Dustless did not dodge and just stood there quietly. His body was suddenly smashed into pieces. Just like the witch's disciples, because the destruction was too thorough and straightforward, not even a corpse was left behind. He disappeared inexplicably. You're really lucky. She let you die so easily. Her Highness Demonis really cherishes you. Bertruccius narrowed his eyes slightly and looked up a few times, but he did not find Dustless's corpse. He was so angry that he cursed loudly. Hee, not only does your witch take pity on me, but she also has an affair with me. Look, she doesn't even want to hurt me. A ripple appeared in the air as Dustless's extremely annoying voice came from an unknown place, and then his body slowly recovered. Arrogant bastard, you actually dare to slander the great Demonis? Get out here quickly, I will tear you to pieces and fry you again. Bertruccius was furious, and he looked around with his protruding eyes. Wuxia. A piercing pain suddenly spread throughout his body. Bertruccius suddenly lowered his gaze. He didn't know when it started, but a large bloody hole had opened up in his abdomen. The reason why I let you go earlier was because I had a plan. However, since that plan has failed, I can only crush this body of yours. As for the other clones, I'll take my time. Unknowingly, Dustless had appeared behind Bertruccius with a frivolous look on his face. Ah! With a big hole in his body, Bertruccius seemed to have been greatly insulted. He howled like a madman, and dense black hands once again erupted from his back. They were like a dark thousand-hand guanyin, slapping towards Dustless in groups. How boring. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head gently and suddenly raised his right hand. The pores on his palm opened and blood-red chakra flowed out as hot as magma. Although he couldn't see these big black hands, it didn't mean that Dustless didn't have any means to subdue them. Uchiha Flame Formation. As soon as these few words fell, the temperature in the air suddenly increased by hundreds of times, and the ground trembled. In an instant the ground collapsed and dark red-hot magma flowed out. "Rise!" Dustless shouted, and the magma on the ground suddenly rose rapidly. In an instant, it erupted tens of meters high, and condensed into a terrifying magma barrier, covering the sky and the earth. It was bright red and even the sky became dark red. Poochie, poochie, poochie. Before the big black hands touched Dustless's body, they were dismembered by the deadly high temperature, and the big black hands that filled the sky were eliminated in a flash. What the hell is this thing so powerful? Also, where did that bastard come from? Is he a god? I've never heard of such a terrifying move. Staring at the flame barrier not far in front of him, Bertruccius seemed to have been awakened by the heat, and he regained his senses. He looked at the flame barrier in panic. From 100 meters away, he could feel that his body was about to melt and be completely absorbed. What will happen? Thinking of this, Bertruccius subconsciously took a few steps back. This barrier was too dangerous. Buzz. At the same time, a flash condensed behind Bertruccius, and Dustless's outline slowly appeared, covered with a flash of light, and greeted his body unceremoniously. Lightspeed kick. The powerful force easily kicked Bertruccius, who was in a daze, and he could even hear a ka-ka-ka sound. Dustless's kick even shattered his ribs. "Oh, no." Bertruccius screamed hysterically, and his voice was filled with panic. The power of Dustless's kick was too strong. His body smashed into the flame barrier like a meteor, and Bertruccius, who was too weak, didn't stop at all. "Stop pretending. Do you think I don't know that you have a lot of spare tires?" Dustless snorted in disdain. At the same time, his body landed on the ground, but everything had changed. The luxurious villa with beautiful scenery was now in ruins, covered by a large amount of sand and dust, and turned into a dangerous place. The destruction within a radius of hundreds of meters was extremely thorough, and the super-huge pit swallowed everything. It was an exaggeration of dozens of meters deep. It was no wonder that Bertruccius was terrified. Anyone who encountered such a scene would feel despair. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2273. Versilia raised her head proudly, and her eyes were bright. Even though she was not as tall as Grievous, she still held her head high. At this moment, she was also trying to look at her from an overlooking angle with an arrogant expression. "Oh, Versilia, you are really hopeless, but I am not qualified to talk about you. In the end, we're all here for the mysterious power in Dustless's body," Greywas said with assurance. Grievous and Versilia are both smart people. Naturally, they understand the value of Dustless. Even if the incantation engraving is damaged, it can be easily repaired with medical ninjutsu. It means that using the incantation engraving will only hurt the body, and there will be no danger to life. It means that everyone can improve their strength. Even if there is a problem, they can hand it over to Dustless for treatment. Now you two have confessed without being pressed. In the end, you approached me because of this. In the spacious hall, a burst of white smoke suddenly swept up, and then Dustless appeared like a ghost. His handsome face was like the sea without waves, calm without the slightest ripple, and his deep eyes were shining as if he could see through everything. The secrets of the two women's hearts could not be hidden from these wise eyes. "Dustless, why are you here?" Grievous and Versilia cried out involuntarily. The two girls jumped in fright, and their expressions became extremely awkward. It was not difficult to hear that the conversation between the two was heard by Dustless. "Why do you feel embarrassed now?" Dustless saw that both women bowed their heads with a little shame, and suddenly became interested. He was not angry and joked, "Didn't you quarrel very much before? Now it's quiet?" Actually, Dustless had long understood what the two of them were planning. It was like a dream in his heart. Grievous and Versilia were not love-struck fools. Dustless did not think that the two of them had fallen in love with him at first sight. His charm was not that great. It is clear that the two of them are completely attracted to his potential, but Dustless has no resistance to this. This kind of thing is too common. Now that things have come to this, I will also lay my cards on the table with the two of you. Anyway, there will be a day to say goodbye sooner or later. Dustless did not hide the slightest and said plainly, "Soon I will help Claire solve her sister's problem and I will leave this world." "What are your plans?" "Leave this world? Where are you going?" Grievous and Versilia's hearts tightened, and there was a loud bang in their heads. In their eyes, Dustless was a veritable money pot and a delicious cake. If he suddenly left this time, who could they rely on in the future? Of course, I have already done it with you too. Wu Qin stared at the two women and said seriously, if you want to leave with me you can, but you can't come back in the future. If you refuse, I can leave behind something for the two of you. After all, we were once husband and wife. Dustless calmly looked at Grievous and Versilia's gazes. He had already done his best. Grievous and Versilia looked at each other and lowered their heads at the same time. They really didn't know how to answer Dustless's question. Are you really not from this world? Grievous sized up Dustless deeply, and her mind couldn't help but wander. Come to think of it, this kid is indeed strange. He is powerful, but the ability he displays seems to have nothing to do with the battle style of the elves, which is puzzling. In the vast universe, the world you are in is just a speck of dust in the universe, a drop of water in the ocean, Dustless said calmly as though he was talking about something insignificant. Grievous and Versilia were dumbfounded. What Dustless said was too far-fetched for them. The world before them was already vast and boundless, not to mention the vast universe. They needed time to digest this massive information. Think about it carefully. The final decision lies with the two of you. I won't make things difficult for the two of you. Dustless explained softly and left as though nothing had happened. Dustless knew that he wasn't a good person. Nothing could be perfect, but at the very least he had to have a clear conscience. No matter what the two of you choose, I won't blame you. After all, everyone has a different attitude toward life. Didn't I mention before that the difference in our realms means that our views are destined to be different? In the spacious classroom, only such a sentence was left, and the two of them were left in a daze. This guy is really unpredictable. Grievous lifted her gaze slightly and looked at Dustless's disappearing back. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She was really happy that Dustless was so considerate, but there was also a knot in her heart that she couldn't untie. Everyone had their own concerns. Suddenly leaving a world without any worries was something that no one could easily let go of easily. Therefore, Dustless gave them enough time to think about it. This kind of choice is really confusing. If Wu Qin can kick me away, I can still hate him a little. I definitely won't go far away with this brat. But this brat suddenly became so gentle. Sigh, it's better if he's a little rough with me. Versilia pouted her thin lips and complained to herself. She was extremely dissatisfied with Dustless's attitude. Seems like we have the same thoughts. Grievous smiled bitterly. She understood what Versilia was thinking. Inferiority complex. That's right, inferiority complex. Compared to Dustless, their horizons were too narrow. Compared to the stars under the night sky, everything in the world was dim. Therefore, inferiority complex was inevitable. If Dustless had said some harsh words, it could have broken their fantasy. But what he said just now was completely sincere and came from the bottom of his heart. It was hard for them to reject him. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2274. It sounded ridiculous, but that was the truth. Grievous and Versilia both had very high statuses, but they were nothing in front of Dustless. Even though he had no power or influence in a world where the strong were respected, the people with the biggest fists always had the final say. At the same time, Claire's older sister also hurried over, but the change in the two was unexpected. Dustless originally thought that the two would calm down and have a chat, but who would have thought that as soon as they met, the two sisters would unexpectedly start fighting as if they were incompatible. Without a doubt, Claire was definitely not her sister's match. Thus, during the duel, she was miserably suppressed by the other party and was in a sorry state. Even Dustless couldn't help but be startled when he saw the blazing flames wreaking havoc in the air. So much bullsh*t. Dustless hurried over as soon as he came out of Grievous's office. If the fight continued, the entire dormitory might be forcibly demolished. Furthermore, in his impression, Claire's sister, Rubia Elstian, was quite good to Claire, so the fight between the two was really strange. Back then, the reason why Rubia Elstian betrayed the Fire Spirit King was because he wanted Claire's life. In anger, Rubia betrayed the Fire Spirit King and stole the strongest flame spirit, the god-slaying flame. Thus, it wasn't hard to see that Rubia loved her sister Claire very much. Thus, Dustless felt that it was very strange when he heard that they were fighting. Claire, you've become a lot stronger. On top of the charred ruins, a girl with dark hair stood tall and graceful. Her blood-red eyes circled around Claire. Looking at the stubborn girl, she felt a bit absent-minded. Was this still the little sister that she used to worship and admire? People always change. Claire said sternly as she met Lubia's gem-like eyes. Although many parts of her clothes were burnt and her fair skin was clearly visible, her pair of stubborn red eyes were extremely resolute. That's true. Rubia, who looked a bit like Claire, nodded slightly and said coldly, I heard that you've joined Dustless, right? Call him out. You're here. Aren't you looking for me? Claire furrowed her brows, feeling quite displeased. After all, Versilia was a good example, stealing her sister's man. Looks like what Restia said was true. You've really fallen for that guy. Looks like I was right to come here. That guy is really unforgivable. At the end of her speech, Ruby's murderous intent surged. Her pupils were almost materialized with murderous intent. You seem to hate him. There shouldn't be any grudges between the two of you, right? Claire's pretty face was filled with confusion and doubt. She knew her sister pretty well, but she didn't remember her sister ever mentioning Dustless. I didn't remember before, but I do now. Rubia couldn't be bothered to explain. Soon after, as if deliberately teasing Claire, she smiled ambiguously. Also, our relationship isn't simple. What a mischievous sister. Dustless, who couldn't take it anymore, stood out and looked at Rubia like an idiot. He had an expression that said, I don't know you, so don't try to climb up the social ladder. Originally, Dustless, as an outsider, didn't need to participate in the conversation between the two sisters. But now that Rubia had started spouting nonsense, if Dustless continued to turn a deaf ear to it, he might be tricked again. You bastard. Dustless's appearance immediately attracted Rubia's firepower. She stared at Dustless for a while and finally said coldly, You're weaker than I imagined. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Dustless couldn't deny it. After all, his body was indeed of the small and skinny type. He was only about 1.75 meters tall. His body wasn't considered tall, and he was even a little skinny. His skin was also very white. Where was the demeanor of a peerless expert? Sometimes he looked more like a gigolo who lived off a woman. It's fine if you two sisters talk things out. There's no need to drag me into this, right? Dustless looked at Rubia and said with a trace of dissatisfaction, If you cause some unnecessary misunderstanding, I'll also be very troubled. No. You're already involved. Rubia shook her finger and explained, You killed that guy Godfeng Zhao, right? From that moment on, you were destined not to be able to stay out of this. Don't you two ignore me? Seeing the two echoing each other, Claire raised her voice and angrily made her presence known. Outrageous. In broad daylight, these two actually treated her like air. How could she have any face left? What do you mean? Dustless frowned and immediately tried to persuade. If you want to be enemies with me because of Godfeng Zhao, I have nothing to say. But I have to give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't fight with me. Otherwise your end will be very miserable. Is that so? Hearing this, Rubia's eyes flashed with a strange light. She laughed with a strong fighting spirit. It's fine if you don't say it. Now that you say it, I'm even more interested in you. Boom boom boom. As soon as she finished speaking, Rubia released a powerful divine aura that blasted Dustless's body, causing his clothes to swell. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, Claire turned into a gust of wind and stood in front of Dustless without hesitation. What's wrong, Claire? Are you afraid that this pretty boy will get hurt? Rubia's brows twitched. It was not difficult to see that Claire was very concerned about Dustless's safety. That's not it. Claire shook her head indifferently and suddenly said, I'm afraid that Dustless won't hold back. If he beats you until half of your body is paralyzed, how can I ask you questions? Hearing this, the corner of Rubia's mouth twitched. Her pretty face darkened and black lines appeared on her forehead. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 reviews plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2275. Beat me until half of my body is paralyzed? Ah. Rubia laughed. She was so angry that she laughed. This was the first time she had heard of someone who could beat her to the point that half of her body was paralyzed. Especially this weak-looking gigolo. What angered Rubia the most was that these words came from the sister she used to respect the most. That's true. Dustless also stood on Claire's side without hesitation and said calmly, You're right. It'd be bad if we beat her until half of her body is paralyzed and she loses her dignity. I don't have the time to take care of her. You too. Countless crows flew past Rubia's head. Her cleavage trembled with anger and she said with an ugly expression, Very good, very good. Claire. Rubia locked her gaze on Claire and said sternly, You don't want me to cause trouble for this guy? then I'll beat him up. Lubia looked at Dustless as if he was a criminal who hated evil. She felt that her most important person had been snatched away by him. Ah, is my face so attractive? Dustless realized that Lubia was like a wolf or a tiger. He couldn't help but rub his nose and say awkwardly, "Get out of the way, Claire. You're not her opponent. She has a lot of runes engraved on her body." Dustless walked in front of Claire and looked at Lubia with a smile. He crooked his finger and said, "Bring it on. If you can make me take a step back, you win. Then you can do whatever you want to me." Arrogant. Hearing this, Lubia's delicate face turned cold. She held a sharp blade in her hand and her body turned into a fiery red stream of light as she rushed forward. Pucci. In an instant, Lubia arrived in front of Dustless like lightning. She stabbed her sword at the speed of lightning and pierced through Dustless's abdomen. So weak? Lubia was stunned. She looked at Dustless who had been stabbed and was surprised. She mocked disdainfully, "So weak. You're not worthy of my sister." "Is that so? I have the same opinion as you." Dustless's cold voice suddenly rang out. He indifferently said, "Even if I stand there and let you kill me, you still won't be able to kill me. You are truly too weak." She looked up and saw Dustless looking at her. His face was as calm as still water, and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. How could he be seriously injured? He could even catch a hint of mockery. That was the most direct form of disdain. "This guy, is he trying to show me?" She lowered her head and looked at the sharp sword that had pierced Dustless's abdomen. There was no doubt that this guy was seriously injured. But what was puzzling was that Dustless's expression did not change in the slightest. His eyes were also staring at her without blinking. Then he couldn't help but look at Claire, who was also unexpectedly calm. "Keep pretending. Let's see how long you can last." Lubia laughed and swung her sword at Dustless again. Pucci. The sharp blade pierced through Dustless's left arm, leaving a hole the size of a hole. "This time you should." Lubia smiled and looked at Dustless's face. Her smile suddenly froze and she cursed, "Do you feel uncomfortable if you don't get cut into pieces?" TSK, not bad. You have a better future than Claire." Dustless was still unmoved. He looked at Lubia and mocked her. She could even hear him saying things like her cleavage was bigger than Claire's. "You should give up. You are too far away from this guy." Claire didn't hold back and said, "He is just teasing you. Otherwise you would have been killed long ago." Lubia remained silent, but her pretty face became more and more unsightly. She thought that Dustless's reputation was undeserved. Now it seemed that he was indeed unfathomable. The enemy was standing right in front of her. Sadly, she couldn't kill him no matter how hard she tried. She was quite frustrated. "I know your goal." Dustless stopped teasing Lubia and said, "You betrayed the Fire Spirit King because he wanted your sister's life, so he stole the strongest fire spirit, the god-killing flame, right?" Dustless stretched lazily and yawned tiredly. The wound that Lubia left behind was slowly being healed by the glint fruit. "Is this true, sister?" Claire looked at Lubia with a complicated expression. She had always been suspicious of Lubia's betrayal. She remembered that her sister had taken good care of her. "How do you know all this?" Panic flashed in Lubia's eyes. She didn't dare to look at Dustless's glasses. Those clear eyes seemed to be able to see through people's minds. Just a glance was enough to make Lubia feel anxious and uneasy. Anyone would feel uneasy when their biggest secret was exposed. "I know more than this. Don't think too highly of yourself. You can fool others with your little tricks, but you can't fool me." Wuxian went straight to the point and said, "So, you took a fancy to Feng Zhao, but to be clear, it's nothing more than seeing his potential. You want to use his Devil King's power to kill the Elf King in one fell swoop and create a world without elves. But it's a pity." At this point, Dustless chuckled. "What you didn't expect was that I suddenly rose to power. And I killed the person you entrusted with such an important task, God Feng Zhao. So, you hate me to the core, right?" "That's right." Dustless revealed all of this. Lubia also admitted that her plan was to let God Feng Zhao awaken his Demon King's power and use his power to kill the Spirit King. Unfortunately, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Before the plan could even fully start, the male lead was killed by Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2276. Since you knew about my plan, you deliberately went against me? It would have been better if Dustless hadn't said anything. The moment he finished speaking, Lubia exploded. She glared at Dustless, her anger soaring like a volcano that was about to erupt. Your plan has nothing to do with me. Dustless completely ignored Lubia's anger and said calmly, that guy went against me, what's wrong with killing him? You'll pay with your life too. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as she finished speaking, Lubia attacked again, the sword light sweeping toward Dustless's head. Clang clang clang. Sparks flew as Dustless reached out to grab the dangerous edge. Lubia's arm trembled slightly as if she had hit a meteorite. Are you a human or not? Lubia was dumbfounded and looked at Dustless in horror. What kind of monster was this? One moment he could ignore physical attacks, the next his skin was comparable to a meteorite. Was there a human like this? That's not important. The problem now is, you're going to be unlucky. Dustless walked toward Lubia step by step with a sinister look on his face. You're not allowed to attack my sister. After understanding what had happened, Claire decisively kicked Dustless aside and jumped to Lubia's side, causing Dustless to roll his eyes. I say, Claire, you're too good at kicking me to the curb after I've outlived my usefulness. Just now you were afraid that I would paralyze your sister, but now you're protecting her. Dustless complained loudly, his face full of displeasure. Dustless's words made Claire's face turn red. She awkwardly explained, let bygones be bygones. You're a great person, so please don't hold a grudge against me. Do as you please. Dustless was too lazy to continue arguing. In the beginning he didn't intend to make things difficult for Lubia. After all, there was no grudge between them, and he hadn't harmed Claire from the beginning. However, even if I let her go, your sister will be finished sooner or later. Right now she's just a facade. Her life force is about to be squeezed dry. Dustless shook his head, full of pity. Frankly speaking, it was all because of Claire that Nubia had fallen to her current state. If she had followed the will of the Fire Elf King, she wouldn't be in such dire straits now. What do you mean? Claire's expression changed as she asked nervously, is it because of the incantation? I'm fine. A faint smile appeared on Lubia's face. She patted Claire's shoulder lightly and smiled calmly. I don't regret it. Sister? Hearing this, the rims of Claire's eyes reddened and her voice was choked with sobs. They had just reunited, and it wouldn't be long before they were separated by life and death. Right. Claire's eyes suddenly lit up as she looked at Dustless with a shifty gaze. She said excitedly, Alice's sister also seemed to have been implanted with a rune, but Dustless cured her. That's absolutely impossible. Nubia shook her head like a rattledrum. She refused to believe it and said, implanted runes will damage the circulation of divine might. Moreover, I have more than one rune in my body. That kind of number, sigh. Anyway, I've already gotten over it. She sighed faintly. She had seen through everything. She clenched her teeth and said unwillingly, my only regret is that I can't kill the Elf King. Speaking of this, Nubia's eyes flashed with blood-red viciousness. She was filled with extreme hatred for the Elf King. You sure know how to talk. Claire saw that Dustless wasn't moving, so she unceremoniously lashed out with her whip. Paw. Dustless easily caught the whip. He shook his head and said, Claire, you can't be expecting me to save her, right? She still wanted to kill me before. Moreover, he blinked his eyes and saw the state of Nubia's body. He frowned and said, implanting so many runes, you really are crazy. For example, Grievous and Versilia both had a Mangekyo rune implanted in their hearts, but Lubia was different. Under the observation of the Tensigan, she could see the internal condition of her body at a glance. There were Mangekyo runes everywhere. It doesn't matter. It's just a broken pot. Nubia was more determined than expected. Her eyes were very calm and there was no change in them. A broken pot? Hearing this, Claire was stunned. She asked nervously, could it be that sister has other problems? Nonsense. Otherwise, who would implant so many runes in their body? Dustless interjected. It's precisely because she knows that she doesn't have a good life, so she took a gamble and implanted a large number of incantation engravings in her body. This is the so-called breaking a broken jar. The strongest spirit you stole from the Fire Spirit King, the God-slaying flame. You should have signed a contract with it, right? Dustless asked softly. Yes. Nubia didn't hide anything. Dustless already knew. Isn't it just a contract with a spirit? Is it more dangerous than your Esther? Claire asked. When she wanted to sign a contract with Esther, the frightening scene was still vivid in her mind. She would never forget it for the rest of her life. She was almost killed. That's not it. Dustless shook his head and explained, the price for signing a contract with the God-slaying flame is your life. What, there's such an evil spirit? Claire exclaimed and looked at Nubia in disbelief. That's indeed the case. Facing Claire's gaze, Ruby nodded. Dustless was speaking the truth. Sometimes, when one obtained great power, they were destined to give up some things. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2277. Can it be treated? Claire looked at Dustless with watery eyes. She was on the verge of tears. It seemed that if Dustless rejected her, she would cry out in pain the next second. Seriously? This girl wanted to kill me before, and now she wants me to save her. Dustless was quite distressed. He rubbed his nose and nodded. It's not a problem to save her, but your sister? Don't think that I will thank you just because you said that. Don't try to lie to me. Nubia shook her head stubbornly. She didn't trust Dustless. In her opinion, such a terminal illness couldn't be cured. It had been so for hundreds of years. That's great. I don't want to use my chakra to save an ingrate. Dustless turned his head and ignored Nubia. What a joke, as if he was begging her. Sister, this isn't Dustless bragging, but he really has such a powerful ability. Claire tried her best to persuade her. After all, Versilia and Grievous were living examples. Impossible. Nubia shook her head stubbornly and looked at Dustless with disdain. She said hatefully, Claire, you are too naive. Even Restia was subdued by this kid. From this matter, you can tell that he is a scheming B*TC. Dustless's mouth twitched a few times. If it wasn't for Claire's presence, he definitely wouldn't mind letting this girl understand how extraordinary Tsukuyumi was. Who is she? At this moment, an unfriendly voice suddenly came from behind. Claire's sister. Dustless didn't even turn his head. From this tone, he knew that Versilia had come. Nubia Elstian. Grievous also followed and stared at Nubia. She frowned and said, You didn't walk into a trap, right? Tell me your goal, Nubia Elstian. Goal? A hint of bitterness flashed in Nubia's eyes. She said helplessly, My goal was to awaken the power of God Fenzeo and use him to destroy the elf kings. Unfortunately, I failed and he is dead. At this point, Nubia looked at Dustless with resentment. Who asked him to be the instigator? Really, that kid provoked me. Is it my fault that I killed him? Dustless felt very conflicted. He simply looked away from Nubia. There is another goal. Nubia's gaze shifted, finally landing on Claire. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing a gentle smile. To be able to see Claire one last time, I can die without regrets. At the same time, Alice, Linslet, and the others had all rushed over. When they heard Nubia's words, they were quite surprised. She was very different from the legendary Fairy of Calamity. Nubia loved Claire very much and cared for her in every possible way. Even if her life was in danger, she still cared about Claire. Die without regrets? Grievous frowned and looked at Claire. The latter nodded and explained Nubia's current condition in detail. The curse engraving would have been impossible to cure in the past. Moreover, you implanted such an exaggerated number of them in your body. Grievous shook her head and looked at Dustless. She pointed at him and said, But this guy's ability is extraordinary. The curse engraving problem can be easily solved. How is this possible? Nubia's mouth was wide open. She stared at the frivolous Dustless and said in horror, Impossible. The curse engraving problem has been plaguing the continent for hundreds of years. What kind of ability is this guy? Nubia knew Grievous's identity. There was no need for her to lie to her. I don't know the specifics, but Dustless really does have that kind of unimaginable power. Grievous smiled bitterly and shook her head. She realized that her previous understanding was too one-sided. She could only shrug and say, Perhaps some people are destined to be different from others. It was undeniable that some people were destined to have different destinies from the moment they were born. The celestial being Fengzao was such an example. Other than Dustless, he was the only male elf user in the world. You can really solve the problem of my body? Nubia's voice trembled as she looked at Dustless. Even though she hid her excitement very well, everyone could still hear it. As the saying goes, even ants are greedy for life. Who would want to die if they could live? The incurable disease in your eyes is just a small problem in my eyes. Dustless looked at Nubia indifferently and said lazily, Just now, who was the one who said that I was only good-looking? I'm a very vengeful person. This guy. Dustless's words caused everyone to roll their eyes. Claire asked unhappily, What do you want? Don't forget that you're my slave elf. Hearing this, Dustless only lightly glanced at Claire before directly ignoring her. He lazily said, "AI, my body's been stiff recently and my legs and feet hurt whenever I move. I'm still lacking someone to wash my feet and massage my back. Do you want to come and try?" As soon as she finished speaking, Wu Chen looked at Lubia with an expression that said, "You've struck gold. What did you say, you bastard? Are you trying to raise the price?" Claire exploded. Her eyes were spitting fire as if she wanted to melt Dustless. "Phew. I promise you." Lubia took a deep breath and was unusually calm. If Dustless could cure her, washing her feet and massaging her back was really nothing. Compared to her life, what was it? It was a piece of cake. Even Lubia, who was used to seeing people's evil intentions, thought that Dustless was being merciful. She also understood that this was a punishment for speaking without thinking. To be honest, to someone who was used to seeing the fickleness of human nature, this wasn't an insult at all. In fact, it was very benevolent. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 reviews plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2278. B** starred, B** starred, B** starred. Dustless and Rubia reached an agreement. Claire and the others watched as the two of them left. Claire immediately cursed Dustless. This guy actually dared to take advantage of a burning house. How shameless. Let's disperse. Since this guy dared to make such a request, it means that he has absolute confidence. Don't disturb Dustless. If you cause any trouble, the losses will outweigh the gains. Grievous said softly and turned around to leave. The few of them looked at each other and gave up on the idea of peeping at Dustless. After all, what Grievous said made sense. If they ruined Dustless's treatment of Rubia, no one would be able to bear the consequences. Not only would Dustless not let them off, but even Claire, his younger sister, would absolutely not allow it. Dustless's dormitory. At this moment, Dustless was lazily sitting on the sofa while Rubia leisurely fetched a cup of water. She gently helped him remove his shoes and socks and placed his feet into the water. "How's the temperature of the water?" Rubia asked softly with a delicate tone. "It's just right." Dustless squinted his eyes and enjoyed it. He muttered to himself, "A young lady from a prestigious family like you actually knows how to serve people so well. Previously, I thought that you boiled the water and wanted to burn me to death." BFFF. Hearing this, Rubia giggled. Her charming eyes were like silk, as if they could release electricity. She asked affectionately, "Then, did you feel my killing intent?" "That's not it." Dustless slowly shook his head and looked at Rubia with admiration. He liked people who knew their own limits. Since they knew that there were people they couldn't afford to offend, they should have bowed their heads in time. Unlike those idiots like God Fengzhao who knew that Dustless was powerful but still wanted to seek revenge. You've broken the curse of the continent that has lasted for hundreds of years. You can solve the problem of the spell engraving. Your future is bright. While gently massaging Dustless's feet, Lubia said in admiration, "Even the Demon King can't do something like this. Of course, it's not that I'm arrogant. Not to mention that God Fengzhao is not as strong as he used to be. Even if he was at his peak, I would be able to kill him with a single breath." Dustless said valiantly with an arrogant expression. Although Dustless was extremely arrogant, it was the truth. He didn't feel that he had gone overboard. In fact, he was very reserved. Even if celestial being Fengzhao was 100 times stronger, Dustless still had the confidence to crush him. "Someone like you will stand at the top of the continent sooner or later." Rubia looked at Dustless with admiration, her eyes even filled with worship. Of course. Dustless was flattered by Rubia's words, and he suddenly felt a little smug. Something's not right. It seems like I'm being led by the nose by you. Little girl, you're very scheming. Dustless recovered after a moment of absent-mindedness. He smiled meaningfully and said, "You're very scheming. You almost got me into it. What are you trying to do by flattering me?" After all, Dustless was an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years or even thousands of years. He instantly understood Rubia's scheme. "I wouldn't dare. I'm no match for you." Rubia quickly denied it. She was extremely shocked. She did intend to flatter Dustless, but this guy's reaction was too fast. "Even if you don't say it, I know what you're trying to do. Little girl, you really don't know how high the sky is. Let me guess what you're trying to do." Dustless leisurely enjoyed Rubia's massage on his feet. He calmly analyzed, "You're trying to flatter me to an unprecedented level, right?" "I'm not bragging. It's the truth." Rubia looked into Dustless's eyes. She was magnanimous and natural. Being able to break the curse engraved on the incantation was something that no one had ever done before. "Is that so? Then I'm flattered." But let's get back on track. Dustless suddenly approached Rubia and reached out to grab her chin. He stared at her gem-like glowing eyes for a while before he smiled and said, "You're trying to trick me into killing the Elf King, right?" Hearing this, Rubia's heart was in turmoil and her eyes were wide open. Seems like it's true. Looking at Rubia's shocked expression, Dustless knew that he had guessed correctly. Rubia had always wanted to create a world without elves. Unfortunately, she did not have the power to do so. That was why she found Feng Zhao, but unfortunately Feng Zhao was dead. Now she was targeting Dustless. After all, compared to Feng Zhao, Dustless's stats were much better. This guy is really hard to deal with. Rubia had a headache. She really wanted to trick Dustless into killing the Elf King, but this guy was too hard to deal with. He saw through her plot in just a few seconds. What's wrong? Speechless? Seeing that Rubia was perspiring, Dustless suddenly changed the topic. Before I left, I really planned to kill them. But now that I think about it, if I did that, wouldn't I have been used by you as a gun? That's a huge loss. Am I shooting myself in the foot? Rubia smiled bitterly. She really did not understand Dustless's thoughts. This guy said that he had a lot of tricks up his sleeves, but in fact he was the one who did not play by the rules. His thoughts were hard to predict. But I can kill them, but you have to promise me something. How about it? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 ratings plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2279. The Chibaku Tensei disappeared, and the sky turned blue again. The huge deterrent force that oppressed people's nerves also disappeared. The only thing left was the devastated earth. The surrounding environment was originally surrounded by mountains. However, Dustless activated the Chibaku Tensei, causing the mountains within a few kilometers to be razed to the ground, turning into an endless plain area. Julius, what happened just now? At this moment, Reinhardt and Julius also stopped fighting. Both of them were dumbfounded as they looked at the terrible environment around them. Who had such a heaven-defying method? It should be a natural disaster, right? Julius said with uncertainty. Thinking of the terrifying supermeteorite just now, he couldn't help but shudder. If it fell, he and Julius would definitely die. Where's the white whale? Reinhardt looked at the sky, but there was no trace of the blue sky at all. Both of us were shocked. The white whale has long been scared away. Julius said angrily, also that kid Xuanhuan seems to have disappeared too. Where did he go? On the other side, Amelia and the others left according to Dustless's instructions, but they encountered other dangers. At this moment, the girls were surrounded by a group of witch cult followers. The strange young man walked slowly, looking at Amelia and the others with a wicked smile, and proudly introduced himself. This is not the first time we've met, but I still have to introduce myself. I'm the witch cult's sloth, great sinner, Bertrucius Romanicanti. It's absolutely impossible. That fellow has already been killed by Dustless. All the women were extremely shocked when they heard this, and their trust towards these words was zero. It could be him indeed. Amelia suddenly spoke, remembering the previous conversation with Dustless, and explained, Dustless once told me that although Bertrucius's strength is average, he is cunning and astute. He has stored the invisible hand in many of his followers, so even if the real Bertrucius dies, he can still be resurrected. This guy in front of us is probably resurrected by a host. He is indeed a scheming man. Hearing this, everyone nodded in unison. This guy looked incomparably arrogant, but he was unexpectedly smart. No wonder he lived so freely. TSK, many thanks for the praise. As thanks, I will kill all of you in a straightforward manner. The young man possessed by Bertrucius laughed sinisterly. He glanced at Amelia and the others and noticed that one of them was missing. He frowned and said, Where is the guy I hate the most? If I remember correctly, his name was Dustless. It would have been fine if he hadn't thought of Wu Qin. Once he thought of Wu Qin, Bertrucius's face suddenly twisted and became as ferocious as a ghost. It was as exaggerated as if Wu Qin was his enemy who had killed his father and they had an irreconcilable blood feud. After all, he had been killed by Dustless once, and this guy had even insulted the witch, which had deeply infuriated Bertrucius. Hurry up and ask that guy to come out. I want to tear him apart with my own hands. Bertrucius said angrily. He clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. At the same time, he began his self-mutilating exercise by biting his fingers madly. You still want to challenge Lord Dustless? You overestimate yourself. Erosa sneered at Bertrucius and poured cold water on him mercilessly. That lord can crush you with one punch. No, he can crush you with one finger. Is that so? Bertruccius was furious when he heard this. He suddenly waved his hand, and a large group of witches' followers behind him pounced on the few of them. I may not be able to do anything to Dustless, but I still have confidence in the few of you. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Under Bertruccius's command, a large group of witches' followers pounced on the few of them in a frenzy. Bertruccius's command was the command of God to them. A bunch of reckless fools. Bertruccius smiled sinisterly and said, "Remember, don't hurt them. Don't let them get hurt at all. Capture them alive, especially that woman called Amelia. I want to slowly torture them to death in front of Dustless." Bang bang bang. The few of them were indeed quite strong. The witches' followers who were attacking them were no match for them at all. They were beaten up in various ways and completely swept away. A bunch of useless fools. Bertruccius cursed loudly. Then he suddenly shouted, "All of you stop." As soon as his voice fell, a large number of black hands emerged from behind Bertruccius and pounced on the few of them. These black hands were extremely special. Only people with witches' genes could see them. As for Rem and the others, they could not see them either. Therefore they were all subdued in an instant. The black hands grabbed the few of them tightly, strangling them until their faces and necks turned red. It was extremely uncomfortable. Hee, compared to me all of you are too weak. Bertruccius laughed wildly and was extremely proud of himself. It was as if the one who was caught was Dustless. Dustless will definitely crush you to death. Rem looked at Bertruccius with an unfriendly face. He was not afraid at all. There was only endless disgust. His eyes were filled with disgust as if he had seen a fat worm. He almost vomited. "You're courting death." Bertruccius was furious. How dare a mere captive be so arrogant? He laughed sinisterly. "Then I'll start with you. How about I break your limbs and head?" That crackling sound of bones breaking is the sound of nature. Don't force your ugly habits on others, especially such cute girls. You actually want to break their limbs and heads. Calling you a pervert is an insult to the word. Dustless's lazy voice suddenly sounded. The hearts of the girls were ignited with hope. "Sorry it took some time to deal with Vegetable Subaru and White Whale. You have suffered. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters." Chapter 2280. You're finally here. I've been dreaming about you for the past few days. Staring at Dustless, Bertruccius did not hide his hatred. To him, Dustless's appearance seemed to have interrupted the cycle of his life. In the past he was busy with how to expand the witch sect, but now, because of Dustless, it directly became how to deal with him. "Thinking about me? You want to kill me, right?" Dustless laughed involuntarily. Looking at Amelia and the others who were bound, he said bluntly, "By the way, this is all our grievances. It has nothing to do with them. Let them go." "As you wish." Bertruccius was unexpectedly magnanimous. He also released the big black hands that bound the few people and focused on fighting Dustless. Of course, it was not that he was being kind or that he had turned back. If Dustless died, these women would not be able to escape from Bertruccius's hands no matter what. Moreover, he would be distracted and weak while holding the women. Bring it on. After the women were freed, Dustless shifted his gaze and fixed it on Bertruccius, who had changed his body. "Although your body has changed and you're much more handsome than before, your strength is still not flattering. Arrogant guy, go to hell and repent for your sins." Hearing this, Bertruccius was enraged. The evil black fog behind him erupted, and a purplish-black hand emerged from it. It slapped toward Dustless with an earth-shattering force. Bang bang bang. Attacked by the invisible big hand, Dustless's body was suddenly scattered and fragmented, turning into golden light that floated around in the sky. He couldn't be more dead, and not even a corpse was left. But it was worth mentioning that although Dustless was crushed, there was no trace of blood. What kind of freak is this guy? Crunch crunch. As if he was angered again, Bertruccius did his signature move again. He bit his finger angrily, and in the blink of an eye, blood flowed out. After fighting a few times, he had a good understanding of Dustless. He knew that his archenemy was safe and sound. Go to hell. Boom boom boom. The formless giant hand wantonly captured the golden light everywhere, wanting to completely crush it, not even letting go of a single ray of light. Idiot, it's just as I guessed. Although you've changed your body, your strength hasn't improved at all. I really don't know where you get the confidence to challenge me. Do you have a hobby of being killed endlessly? In the void, a large amount of light gathered, and a figure walked out of the golden light. Dustless appeared once again, unharmed. Even if I can't kill you, it's the same for you. You can't kill me either. What's there to be so arrogant about? Bertruccius seemed to have really given up, and he began to verbally attack Dustless. In this world there's nothing I can't do. The only difference is the price. Dustless glanced at the deranged Bertruccius and spoke tirelessly. In fact, a simple infinite Tsukuyami was enough to end everything and no creature could escape. At that time, everything would fall and come to an end. However, just as Dustless said, the price to do so was too great. It wasn't worth it for a mere Bertruccius. And as far as I know, this ability of yours isn't unsolvable. Dustless narrowed his eyes slightly. You can only forcefully possess those believers who are highly compatible. It seems that there are only a few of them. If all of them die, what do you have to fight me? You even know about this? Bertruccius's pupils suddenly shrank. He really suspected that there was a spy for Dustless in the witch sect. Don't let your imagination run wild. I'm not interested in participating in your trivial matters. Dustless waved his hand impatiently and suddenly pointed his finger at Bertruccius. I'm really sorry. This clone of yours is going to die before coming out to take a breath of fresh air. Goodbye. Ka. Dustless's straightened thumb suddenly flashed with a bright flash. Spiritual pressure was constantly output from his body. The fist-sized energy ball was like a black hole that couldn't be filled, constantly absorbing the vast spiritual pressure in Dustless's body. Perhaps because the energy was too strong, the surrounding sky distorted, forming a huge vortex that devoured everything. Shoo. Immediately after, Dustless glanced at Bertruccius and flicked out the energy ball with his finger. Wangsu's flash. A thick beam of light descended from the sky. It was clearly just a narrow energy ball and looked very weak. However, the moment it left Dustless's control, it turned into an extremely thick beam of light that covered the sky. Boom. There was an earth-shattering explosion in the void, deafening everyone. Dustless and the others might not have noticed anything, but Bertruccius's face turned green. He gritted his teeth unwillingly. His densely packed black hands were incinerated by Dustless's void flash. Moreover, the two moves did not dissipate. The destructive beam of light was still unwilling to give up, and the remaining shock waves blasted towards him. Get out of my way! Bertruccius roared. His body was like a spider and a large number of black hands shot out. They all opened their hands and slapped towards the vast sky, trying to shatter the beam of light falling from the sky in one fell swoop. Boom. The moment the two collided, the shockwaves of the void flash crushed the world. The explosion shattered the sky. The black hands were unable to resist at all and were simply annihilated. Once again the entire army was killed. Not only that, although Bertruccius was lucky not to be hit head-on, the shockwaves from the explosion of Wangsu's flash were not something he could resist. After being engulfed by the shockwaves, he was turned into ashes again. Bertruccius was very miserable. He was killed by Dustless again. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2281. Boy, why are you in a daze? Quickly hand over the valuable things to me. The three hooligans looked at Dustless fiercely, and their words revealed a deep contempt. Looking at his sluggish appearance, he was probably scared silly. Useless trash. One of the hooligans with a knife laughed disdainfully. It seems that it really is another world from scratch. Dustless sighed and immediately picked his ears and smiled at the three hooligans. What did you say just now? Grandpa has earplugs, I didn't hear it clearly, repeat it for me. Boy, you are courting death. Hearing this, the three of them were furious and instantly rushed over. Reckless thing. Dustless saw this and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. This kind of mortal, he didn't want to lower himself to their level, but if the other party wants to die, then there is no other way. Killing you all would be letting you off too easily. Just live on in fear. The scarlet eyes blinked and a majestic eye power invaded the minds of these people. Plop. These people obviously couldn't resist Dustless's Sharingan, and they suddenly fell to the ground, their bodies trembling. Idiot, next time when I rob, I must pick the old, weak women and children. Without looking at the three of them, Dustless walked out of the alley. Rumble. At this time, Dustless's stomach failed to live up to his expectations, and his pace suddenly accelerated a lot. Let's find a place to eat first, the rest can be discussed later. Swoosh. At the moment when he was about to walk out of the alley, a black shadow sped past. Although the figure was very short and was still a child, but the skill was abnormally strong, and he skillfully jumped on the wall and disappeared from Dustless's sight. That kid just now seems to be Ferret, right? A short kid suddenly appeared in his mind. Dustless muttered to himself, what a familiar scene. Could it be that Ferret snatched Amelia's badge? Dustless lowered his head and thought while walking, some places are always amazing coincidences. Ta-ta-ta-ta. At this moment the sound of messy footsteps came from the front. Dustless was obviously too engrossed in his thoughts. He still kept his head down and didn't give way. Bang. The mysterious newcomer bumped into Dustless in an instant, and both of them retreated at the same time. Why are there so many unlucky things happening when I just came to this world? Am I possessed by the tragic protagonist, Leon? Wuxian muttered. At the same time he raised his eyes and his pupils suddenly shrank. The person who bumped into Dustless was a delicate and cute girl. She had hair that reached her waist, purple eyes that sparkled like crystals, and a white flower on her forehead. Realizing that this person was strangely familiar, Dustless subconsciously asked, Amelia? You know me? The silver-haired girl's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. She stared at Dustless again and finally shook her head. I know you, but you definitely don't know me. Dustless smiled and introduced himself. Nice to meet you, my name is... Without giving Dustless time to introduce himself, an anxious shout suddenly came. Amelia, that guy is Dustless, he's with that thief. What the hell, someone actually knows me. Is there a transmigrator like me? Dustless was flabbergasted and he stood there stupidly without moving. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large number of icicles suddenly shot at Dustless and easily froze him. His whole body was covered in thick ice, and only his head was fine for the time being. Good job, Parker. The voice spoke again, its tone wild with joy. It ran over from behind Amelia, and Dustless was extremely familiar with this person, Leon. He was also the most tragic protagonist of the year. June, that's impossible, how does this guy Leon know me? Dustless was covered in thick ice, and his body's movements were restricted. He couldn't figure it out and wondered in his heart, this is clearly the first time we've met, why is this kid looking at me with such an expression? Looking up, he saw Leon staring at Dustless with bloodshot eyes. This feeling was as if he had met the enemy who killed his father, and he couldn't wait to tear Dustless into pieces. This should be the first time we've met, right? Dustless was the first to speak. However, Leon did not care. He said to Amelia, this guy is called Dustless. He's in cahoots with the kid who stole your badge just now, and... Leon looked at Dustless with hatred and slandered, this guy is simply a deranged bastard, the degree of his cruelty is outrageous, he doesn't even spare the old, the weak, the women, and the children. The number of innocent women he raped is at least 10,000 if not 100,000. So deranged? Is there such a bad person in the world? Amelia's face was also full of shock, and then she looked at Dustless seriously and asked coldly, is what Leon said true? Dustless was dumbfounded and his mind was in a mess. The beginning of this script is not right, I've always been the one to slander others, but this time, someone has turned the tables and it's that little bastard Leon. No doubt this is the first time I've met him, but why does he hate me? Dustless's brain cells sped up, and then he had a flash of inspiration and muttered to himself, this kid even knows my name, this is the strangest part, seems like there's only one possibility. Could it be that Leon was killed by me in the past and then, death's return? And knows that I'm the big boss of the villain so he hates me so much? Does he want to use Amelia to get rid of me? With this thought, the confusion in Dustless's heart suddenly cleared up. If Leon was killed by him in the past, then it was reasonable for him to hate Dustless now. This time I'm going to kill you. Leon looked at Dustless with hostility. Dustless had guessed right, he was cut into pieces by Dustless, and his body was fed to the monsters. After he was rewound and resurrected, Leon hated Dustless to the core. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2282. This is interesting. I used to be the only one who knew the future, but now Leon has turned the tables. Even I have fallen into his trap. Wuxian smiled but didn't say anything. He looked at Amelia and explained, young miss, everything I said before is obviously nonsense. I don't know that thief and we aren't in the same group. We haven't even met. Amelia, don't listen to his bullshit. I can guarantee you that he is the demon of the night, a pervert who won't let go of the old, the weak, the women, and the children. Keiichi Subaru continued to defame her. The previous miserable memory emerged in his heart. He was almost killed by Dustless and in the end he was chopped into 8 pieces and fed to the demon beasts. Although he was now in the samsara of death, there was still a shadow that couldn't be erased. Therefore, Kaiwa Subaru decided to take the initiative. Instead of waiting for Dustless to take revenge on him, he might as well take the initiative and kill him. Little girl, you don't really believe him, do you? Noticing that Amelia was looking at him suspiciously, Dustless was extremely depressed. What Dark Knight Demon King? It was completely fabricated by this brat. I believe in Pleiades. You're a good person. He will not accuse you. Amelia finally stood on Leon's side and looked at Dustless with hostility. I can't believe I was tricked by Kaiwa Pleiades. If I don't make you suffer, I will take your last name. Wuxian was furious. His body emitted a dangerous energy fluctuation. The ice that froze his body made a ka-ka-ka sound. His scarlet eyes locked on Liu Subaru. Bang. Dustless's aura was seriously too horrifying, instantly shattering the ice that covered his body. Little mouse hiding in the dark, come out. Dustless's gaze swept past Amelia and Liu Subaru. Behind the two of them, there was a flickering figure, especially that head of fiery red hair and white coat, which was extremely dazzling. Such sharp senses. The handsome young man frowned and did not mingle with the crowd. He was handsome and had a slender sword at his waist. This guy is called Reinhardt, right? Dustless muttered to himself. He knew that the guy in front of him had inherited the title of Sword Saint. His strength was at the peak of this world. But Dustless was not afraid of him. Clang, clang, clang. Reinhardt put his hands in his pockets and looked at Dustless with a serious look in his eyes. A look of disbelief flashed across his eyes as he muttered to himself in disbelief. My sword seems to be trembling. Why is that? Reinhardt's sword was very special. It was called the Dragon Sword, Reed. It had its own consciousness. If it judged that the opponent was not qualified to draw it, it would not take the initiative to unsheath it. If the opponent was strong, Reinhardt's sword would automatically unsheath. Why is it shaking? Reinhardt was extremely confused. His right hand reached for the dragon sword at his waist. In an instant, his arm also began to shake with the frequency. This feeling made Reinhardt very cautious. The dragon sword seemed to have met its natural enemy and was terrified of its opponent. It should be an illusion. Reinhardt lowered his head and muttered to himself. His eyes were fixed on Dustless. His face was full of smiles and he looked quite gentle and good-looking. It was hard to associate him with a bad guy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Keiichi Subaru suddenly stood in front of Amelia and showed a faint smile. In the face of Dustless's murderous gaze, she was as calm as a breeze. If there's anything, just come at me. Don't hurt Amelia. She's just a girl. If you're not happy with me, just come at me. I promise I won't even blink an eye. Well said. Reinhardt smiled and looked at Keiichi Subaru. She clearly knew that she might not be Dustless's opponent, but she still stood in the front line without hesitation. This kind of person was worthy of admiration. He gave her a heartfelt thumbs up. Why are you protecting me? We just met. The simple Amelia was also very touched. Her eyes were like the dazzling sun as she gently gazed at Keiichi Subaru. Some things, no matter who is right or wrong, as a man, I have to stand in front of a girl without hesitation. That's all. If there's anything you're not happy with, just come at me, Dustless. Keiichi Subaru waved her hand with a look of righteousness. She was very free and easy, as if she would not regret being killed by Dustless in the next second. I'm convinced by this show of pretentiousness. Dustless's old face twitched, and 100,000 alpacas' army flew through his mind. This stinky boy dares to use me to pick up girls. Good boy, his tricks are really deep. No wonder he's a time traveler. You want to fight with me? See how I'll kill you. Keiichi Subaru was expressionless, but she was laughing in her heart. According to the development of the plot before the return of death, her words had indeed angered Dustless. Dustless wanted to kill her, but with Reinhardt, the Sword Saint, there, he was temporarily stopped. Keiichi Subaru was deeply in love with Amelia, so knowing Dustless's future, Keiichi Subaru would definitely not let go of this good opportunity to show off to Amelia and show her his manliness. Even if I'm killed, I have a clear conscience. Keiichi Subaru's lips curled up slightly, and he saw Amelia looking at him gratefully. What happened next was indeed as Keiichi Subaru had imagined, and Dustless was really angry. Come at you? I'll fulfill your wish. Dustless sneered and his eyes turned a bit. Then he said in a deep voice, Heavenly Hand Power. In the next second, Dustless switched places with Rock, who was next to Keiichi Subaru. Something's wrong. Keiichi Subaru saw Dustless descending from the sky, and her mouth was wide open, and her head was buzzing. She cursed in her heart. He should be fighting with Reinhardt. Why is he fighting with me? Did I remember the previous plot wrongly? Let me enjoy it. The enraged Dustless grabbed Subaru, and with a wave of his hand, he slapped Subaru to the ground and raised his foot to step on him. Who told you to use me to show off? Who told you to pick up girls with me? Who told you to slander me? Every time Subaru roared, a footprint would appear on his face. Chapter 2283. Bang, bang, bang. Dustless's big foot continued to trample on Setsuki Subaru's face without any mercy. Every time it landed, in addition to a footprint, there were also blood stains. You dare to trick me? I'll make you regret living in this world. Dustless beat Setsuki Subaru as hard as he could. However, the situation this time was different. If he hit too hard and this bastard rewound, would he rewind as well? This kid's advantage is quite big. Dustless complained in his heart. Just as he was about to stomp on Setsuki Subaru, a cold blade came from behind. Swoosh, swoosh. The dangerous blade carried the sound of breaking through the air and swept towards Wu Chen's back. As far as sneak attacks are concerned, your movements are too big. Dustless turned his head to look at the crimson-haired man and grinned. Shinra Tensei. Bang. A majestic wave suddenly erupted, and the blade was bounced away. The crimson-haired man was also shaken by the powerful force and was forced to retreat. What a strange move. Who exactly are you? Reinhardt looked at Dustless cautiously and immediately said, People from the Sword Saint family will not sneak attack others. Really? Sword Saint? Sounds so scary. Dustless turned his head to look at Reinhardt with a faint smile on his face. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Reinhardt. This guy is Dustless. His move is very dangerous and it is released through those eyes. I remember it's called Rinnegan. Setsuki Subaru, who had been stomped dozens of times by Dustless, pointed at Dustless and explained, Be careful, these eyes can bang, bang, bang. However, before Setsuki Subaru's voice fell, Dustless stomped on him dozens of times in a row. That's for your cheap mouth. That's for stealing my lines. That's for showing off. Dustless stomped on him dozens of times in a row. Although he did not kill Setsuki Subaru to prevent him from rewinding, his strength was extremely terrifying. Setsuki Subaru's entire cheek was badly mutilated, and he grimaced in pain with a ferocious expression. Don't think that you can ride on my head and show off just because you know my future. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks are just asking for humiliation. Dustless smiled disdainfully. In fact, it's good that you can't die. I'll let you understand what it means to live. Swoosh, swoosh. Behind his back, a large number of icicles suddenly emerged, shooting towards Dustless uniformly. Bang, bang. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Swoosh, swoosh, so swoosh, so swoosh, 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 so swoosh, swoosh, so swoosh, swoosh. Ah. Even though his entire body was frozen, Dustless still looked natural in the ice. He looked at Amelia helplessly and confusedly. Setsuki Subaru is really fast. God knows how many bad things he said about me to this girl. Dustless could not help but have a headache. He also knew that Amelia was not a bad person. She was just fooled by Setsuki Subaru. How dare you beat up Lord Plio? Unforgivable. Amelia's body erupted with a large amount of cold air, and all of it hit the frozen Dustless. The ice actually made a ka-ka-ka sound, and once it completely collapsed, Dustless would definitely shatter like the ice. I can't forgive you? This is really unreasonable. Dustless shook his head and explained, I don't know that thief at all. This brat framed me. According to my previous style, I would have long dismembered him into pieces and thrown his corpse into the river to feed the fish. Gulp. Setsuki Subaru shuddered when he heard this. Before the samsara of death, Dustless had indeed done this. Therefore he hated Dustless to the core. Lord Plio would never accuse a bad person like you. Amelia looked coldly at Dustless. She clenched her fists tightly when she saw Setsuki Subaru's bloody body. Amelia Charcoal, seeing the furious Amelia, Keiichi Subaru's face was full of tears. She felt that it was worth it to be beaten up by Dustless. At least Amelia was the same as her. It should be understood that during the samsara of death, Amelia was fooled by Dustless and hated Keiichi Subaru very much. Setsuki Subaru was very excited now that she finally valued him. F***ck your mother. Looking at the overjoyed Kaieya Subaru, Wu Chin just uttered these words silently. Little girl, you are very kind. You don't need to hang out with this trash. Dustless was frozen in the ice. If he were an ordinary person he would have turned into a popsicle. However, Dustless was safe and sound. He said in a lazy and calm tone, "This is the first time I met this guy. But he knows my name and my moves. Don't you think it's strange?" That's true. Harriet and Amelia were both stunned. They were not reckless people. They were very smart. After thinking about it, they realized that something was wrong. Satsuki Subaru knew Dustless so well. He even knew the names of his moves. Obviously they had known each other before. Don't listen to his nonsense. Seeing that the two of them were shaken, Keiichi Subaru quickly said, "After all, this guy is a womanizer who is feared by everyone. It's understandable that you have heard of him. Boy, it's a small world. You just wait and see." Dustless glared at Satsuki Subaru and said, "In order to prove my innocence, I can lead you to find the little girl who stole the badge. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2284. Are you sure? Looking at Dustless suspiciously, Amelia did not hide her doubts. Something is wrong with the script. The half-dead Mao Yuang was depressed. According to the original plot of Return of the Dead, he should have brought Amelia to find Ferret and successfully obtain the badge. He should have also won the appreciation of the beauty. How did he become Dustless? Of course, why would I lie to you? Dustless looked at Amelia and explained, "Just now, I saw the little girl's face clearly. Coincidentally, I know that she lives in the slums. When we find her, we will know whether I am innocent or not." That's true. Just say yes, Leah. The white cat that had been hiding in Amelia's neck suggested. Even Parker has fallen from grace. Damn it. Keiichi Subaru glanced at Dustless with resentment. She was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She didn't understand why Parker suddenly liked this guy. Parker, is he really reliable? Amelia lowered her head and stroked Parker's fur. She could not help but look at Dustless a few more times. He is not reliable, but... Parker answered straightforwardly. His cat eyes squinted slightly as he carefully sized up Dustless. He could not help but shake his head and said, "I can't tell how strong he is, but my intuition tells me that if we fight with him, it will be more serious than just now. So just say yes, Leah." "But this guy is frozen by me." Amelia frowned. Dustless was currently frozen by a thick layer of ice and his movements were restricted. "It's useless." Parker looked at Dustless with a shrewd gaze. "Look at this guy. He looks like he is about to fall asleep. How can he be frozen?" In other words, if a person was about to be frozen, they should be nervous. But Dustless, on the other hand, was about to fall asleep. This was too strange. "I also suggest that you go with him." Harriet, who had been silent, interrupted. He looked at Dustless cautiously. The gentleness in his eyes disappeared in a flash and was replaced by a serious look. Although he had not fought with Dustless before, there was an inexplicable voice in his heart that told him that this guy in front of him was very scary and extremely powerful. Moreover, he had doubts about what Keiichi Subaru said before. How could a powerful person do those sneaky things? The chances were too slim. Bang. At the same time, the ice that froze Wu Chen's body instantly exploded and turned into debris all over the ground. However, Wu Chen's complexion did not change. There was a slight smile on his ruddy face as if nothing had happened just now. It was hard to associate his smile with that of a womanizer. This bastard. Why isn't he following the script? How preposterous. What he did was different from what happened before with the Return of the Dead. Keiichi Subaru cursed angrily in her heart. She stared at Wu Chen, who was in high spirits and felt depressed. She had planned to show off her power in front of Amelia, but the result was exactly what she had said. She failed to show off and was trampled on. As a result, Keiichi Subaru's face was disfigured. However, it was not difficult for Keiichi Subaru. As long as he used the Return of the Dead again, all the previous tragedies would happen again. "Okay, I promise you that you will lead us to find the thief. If you are really wronged, I am willing to sincerely apologize." Amelia finally agreed to Dustless's condition. At the same time, she walked to Keiichi Subaru's side and helped him heal the scar on his cheek. Gosh, this chick is too kind. Dustless glanced at Amelia, who was helping Keiichi Subaru, and shook his head. At the same time he frowned. "I can't let Keiichi Subaru die. This guy can't be killed. If I kill him, his protagonist aura will activate again. That overpowered rewind skill might even drag me back and start all over again." Dustless was in a dilemma. This was the first time he had encountered such a tricky situation. No matter how he killed Keiichi Subaru, this guy would come back to life again. "Let's go." I will take you to find that little bastard and prove your innocence. About half an hour later, Subaru's bloody face had returned to normal. However, his whole face was still swollen like a hydrogen balloon. Damn you, Dustless. I will not forgive you. Subaru, who was grimacing in pain, glared at Wu Qin. Her eyes were fixed on Wu Qin as if she wanted to swallow him alive. Also, damn it, this is like seeing a ghost. Is there something wrong with my skill? Subaru cursed in his mind. According to the plot before his death return, Dustless wouldn't even bother to talk to them. He would crush them with his overwhelming strength and then walk away. However, this time, Dustless took the initiative to take them to find Ferret. How could Subaru not be surprised? Pleo-kun, can you walk? Amelia asked with concern. Of course I can walk. This guy's leg is not broken. Why can't I walk? I just stepped on his face. Dustless looked at Subaru with a smile and said, Boy, are you trying to pretend that your leg is broken so that this lady can help you take advantage of it? How is that possible? I'm not a despicable person like you. Subaru looked at Dustless seriously. He wanted to grab Amelia's hand, but after hearing what Dustless said, he immediately pushed Amelia away. This bastard must be doing it on purpose. Subaru cursed Dustless in his mind. His heart was bleeding. He had planned to do it, but after hearing what Dustless said, he even helped Amelia up. Didn't that mean that he agreed with Dustless's words? Don't think that you are so great just because you can rewind. Dustless sneered. Subaru could only rewind if he died. If he didn't die, his skill would be useless and he would still be a weak piece of trash. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2285. Dustless sneered. Looking at Subaru's bitter face, he knew that he had guessed right. This guy did have such a shameless idea. You want to use me to pick up girls? You are quite ambitious. How dare you use me to slap your face? Dustless moved closer to Subaru and said in a low voice, You can show off in front of me, but if you go too far, I can't help but throw you to the fish. That would be a tragedy. You, hearing Dustless's threat, Subaru trembled and looked at Dustless with fear. He knew that this guy was a man of his words. Before the return of death, he had been cut into pieces by Dustless and fed to the magical beasts. Wait and see. Glaring at Dustless fiercely, Subaru hid behind Amelia and Reinhardt in an extremely cowardly manner. Trash. Wu Qin smiled contemptuously. Then he led the way in the front and said lazily, Hurry up. Let's finish it before dark. Then we can find a place to eat. Dustless left as soon as he finished speaking. His memory was not bad, so he knew the approximate location of the slums. Follow me, Leah. Parker gave her a comforting look. Although he trusted Subaru, Dustless didn't give him the first impression that he was a bad guy. On the surface, he looked a little unreliable and glib-tongued, but he was very calm, as if he had everything under control. About half an hour later, Dustless, Amelia and the others came to a dilapidated slum. The environment was stinky and flies were flying everywhere. The strange smell was disgusting. The people living here were also thin and sallow. Their clothes were ragged, and their eyes were cloudy and listless. It seemed that they hadn't eaten for a long time. Girl, this is a dog-eat-dog world. If you are so kind, you will be plotted against sooner or later. There is a limit to everything. Excessive kindness will be used by others. In an abandoned house, Amelia's forehead was covered in sweat. She was saving a fainted drifter. It seemed that she hadn't eaten for many days. Her breathing was very weak. This guy is really too kind. Dustless looked at Amelia helplessly. Amelia had saved quite a few people along the way. Mind your own business. Amelia glanced at Dustless. Because of Subaru, she hated Dustless. Maybe it was because Dustless beat her. Hehe, you deserve it. Seeing this scene, Subaru laughed gloatingly. She was extremely happy to see Wu Qin suffer. Haha, you can laugh slowly. Sooner or later you will cry bitterly. In this regard, Dustless also smiled faintly. He was also an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. It was impossible for him to get angry just because of someone's ridicule. Let's go. After a few more minutes, Amelia put out the fire of the sallow and emaciated drifter. She also gave him a small amount of money. After that, she followed Dustless to find Ferret and ask for the badge. We're here. Pointing at the dilapidated house not far away, Dustless finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I didn't remember it wrong. Otherwise, I would have to live with the name of a thief. Is this the place? It seems that the thief who stole my badge was forced to do so. He treated the badge as something valuable and just wanted to make a living. Amelia looked around and said to herself, Ferret's house could barely shelter them from the wind and rain. The house in front of them had been in disrepair for many years. Some parts of the house had already decayed into dregs. You're right. Although that little girl stole from you, she was forced to do so. If she could live a carefree life, who would be willing to be a thief? It was hard to live a human life. Sometimes you have to do things that you can't help but have to do. Dustless said with a lot of emotion. It sounds reasonable. Amelia nodded slightly. It was rare for her to agree with Dustless's point of view. Humph, it sounds like you are trying to absolve yourself of your crime. A sarcastic voice came. Turning around, it was Kechup. As for Reinherit, he had quietly left. As for what he was going to do, Dustless didn't know. He guessed that he was looking for more people to help deal with Dustless just in case. Facing Dustless alone, Reinherit didn't have enough confidence. Creak. The door was gently opened and a young head popped out. She looked at Dustless with a puzzled face. Who are you? This person with a mouth full of doubts blinked her bright eyes. Her voice was quite crisp. This young girl was Ferret. Amelia recognized her at a glance. Give me back the things you took. I can let bygones be bygones. If it was something else, I wouldn't want it. But that badge means too much to me. Amelia looked at the short Ferret and said in a very gentle tone. Perhaps in her opinion, Ferret was still an insensible child. The reason why she became a thief was that she was forced to do so. After all, life in the slums was too difficult. It was difficult to even fill one's stomach. Who stole your things? Don't falsely accuse me. Do you think that I am easy to bully because I am young? Ferret put her hands on her hips and yelled, Master Rum, someone is here to cause trouble. As soon as she said this, a huge and strong old man swooped down. Because of his huge body, the ground trembled slightly when he walked. Who is it that is causing trouble in my territory? Do you want to be smashed into meat paste by me? The giant old man named Rum was very domineering. He carried a huge hammer in his hand, and his aura was awe-inspiring. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2286. Old man, step aside. It's not easy to live to such an old age. Go and retire quietly. You're old and weak. If you get injured, you might die. There's no place for you to behave atrociously here. Dustless was not afraid at all when he saw the old man with eyes as big as brass bells. Gulp. On the other hand, Kaiwa Subaru was so scared that he hid behind Amelia, his body trembling slightly. Although the death return skill was quite powerful, it did not increase his combat power. After all, Kaiwa Subaru was still a weakling. Moreover, this golden finger had a huge flaw. It could only be used when he was dead. Therefore, Kaiwa Subaru was called the most tragic protagonist of the year. Little brat, you're so young but you talk big. Ferocity flashed in Master Ram's old eyes. He lifted the huge hammer and smashed it down. Ha ha ha. Well done. It's best to smash Dustless into minced meat. He's such an eyesore. I don't want him to spoil my plans every day. I'm the protagonist destined to save the alternate world. Kaiwa Subaru laughed and cheered in his heart. He gave the crazy Master Ram a thumbs up. Lord Pleiades, Amelia frowned. She was disgusted by this attitude. However, when she recalled the damage Dustless had done to her, she was relieved. In her opinion, Kaiwa Subaru was just holding back his anger. He would return to normal once he vented it out. Seeing the hammer falling on his head, Dustless was calm and relaxed. He stretched out his skinny arm lazily and said, Old man, you're so old and yet you're still looking for trouble. You'll be killed sooner or later. You arrogant guy. Do you think you can block Master Ram's attack with one hand? You're overestimating yourself. Run if you know what's good for you. I didn't steal anything from you. Falut crossed her arms in front of her and pouted slightly. She did not hide the sneer on her face. She quickly distanced herself from Master Ram as if she was afraid that Dustless would be smashed into minced meat and his blood would stain her body. Scott, you're no match for him. Run away from Dustless. Amelia also became nervous. She couldn't help but worry for Dustless. He sincerely felt that he was overestimating himself. After all, how powerful could a hand that had not been enchanted with magic power be? He was probably not much stronger than an ordinary person. Although Amelia hated Dustless because of Kaiwa Subaru, she didn't want him to die, especially when he was trying to help her find her badge. Boom boom boom. Faint mana fluctuations burst out of Dustless's body, and just as Amelia was about to save him, the mace smashing down had already covered Dustless' head. Ah, this is bad, this is bad. Seeing such a cruel scene, I'm definitely going to have nightmares. Falut hurriedly closed her eyes and covered her eyes with her hands, unable to bear to look at this bloody scene. Keiichi was the same. He quickly covered his eyes. In terms of endurance, he might not be as good as Falut. After all, he had always been a flower in a greenhouse. How could he withstand the destruction of the storm? Bang! The hammer hit Dustless's body, creating a dull explosion. It was as if his body was smashed. The horrifying sound made Falut and Keiichi shiver. They couldn't help but shiver. Master Rom, did this guy become a meat patty? Did you really do it? Actually, I just wanted to scare him away. I didn't expect you to really kill him. Falut was in a dilemma. Her tone was filled with self-blame. She felt bad that she had saved a life for no reason. After all, she and Dustless had never met before, and there was no blood feud between them. However, Master Luo Mu kept his mouth shut. The entire place was dead silent. Master Rom, you... Out of curiosity, Falut moved her hands away and opened her eyes. Her shining pupils suddenly froze. How is this possible? Falut's tone was filled with endless shock. Dustless really did it? It was just one hand. It looked so thin and weak, but it blocked Master Rom's attack. Dustless's mace didn't fall on his head. He looked so relaxed and casual. No, it wasn't appropriate to say that it was just one hand. Looking up, Dustless only used his middle finger to catch the mace that was smashing towards his head. This guy is so strong. Seeing this scene, not to mention the others, even Amelia was so shocked that she opened her mouth wide. Her eyes widened as she stared at Dustless, who was as steady as a mountain. Her heart skipped a beat. There's no fluctuation of magic. Did he catch it with his body? What a monster. How hard is this guy's body? Amelia took a deep breath, and her heart almost jumped out of her chest. Damn bastard. Why is his body so hard? Is he the main character or am I the main character? Are you kidding me? Keiichi was also dumbfounded. She looked at Dustless, who had blocked Master Luo Mu's attack with a single finger. She was jealous and envious. Thinking of her pathetic gold finger, she burst into tears. Why was there such a huge gap between people? He can block my attack with one finger? A magical beast? That's impossible too. Master Rom's heart skipped a beat. He gritted his teeth and roared in a daze. Even if a magical beast doesn't have the slightest resistance or defense, it can still be smashed to death by me. This guy used one finger. It must be witchcraft. Ehe, you want to smash me to death? Dustless pursed his lips and chuckled. He raised one finger. Anyway, I'm bored for the time being. Why don't I give you a chance to destroy me? Old man, do it 100 million times. Dustless was too lazy to explain. He glanced at the broken mace. You want to destroy me with this thing? This isn't a fairy tale. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2287. Cough cough cough. Master Rum suddenly coughed twice, his face twitched and said in a strange tone, "Misunderstanding, this is all a misunderstanding." The form was stronger than the person. When it was time to lower one's head, one had to lower one's head. After living for most of his life, Master Luo Mu understood this basic principle very well. Old man, you are very flexible. Dustless smiled and did not make things difficult for him. He looked at Ferret and said calmly, putting aside the time when you stole Amelia's badge, this should be the first time we met. Although Ferret did not know what Dustless was talking about, it was the truth, so he nodded and confirmed that Dustless was telling the truth. Oh no, I'm going to be exposed. Seeing this, Keiichi's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously looked at Dustless, but he was nowhere to be seen. Boy, you accused me of colluding with Ferret and being her accomplice, right? Now how are you going to explain this? Sensing danger, Keiichi was about to hide behind Amelia, but he did not expect a cold voice from behind. Before he could run to Amelia's back, he was caught by a big hand. Who caught me? Let me go. Keiichi felt even more uneasy. The moment he turned his head, his pupils suddenly shrank and he shouted angrily, "Dustless, let me go." Being carried by Dustless like a chicken, Keiichi felt particularly aggrieved. Let him go. Amelia was stunned for a moment, then she scolded, "Bullying a weak person like Plyakin will only make you look shameless." It doesn't matter. Dustless did not care. He smiled and said very casually, "Anyway, I'm thick-skinned. It's useless for you to mock me. I've always been a person with flaws. Since he dared to slander me, what's wrong with me teaching him a lesson? Amelia's pretty face was extremely embarrassed. It was undeniable that this matter was indeed Kayatsuki Subaru's fault. After all, he had accused Dustless of colluding with Ferret. Now that the truth was clear, teaching this boy a lesson was reasonable. My lord is magnanimous. Dustless looked at Xuanhuan with a generous face. I'll give you 2 chances. Kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistake, or I'll beat you up. Which one do you choose? You call this magnanimous? Dustless's words made Kayuezuo's nose almost crooked. She glared at him and said, You want me to kneel before you? Dream on. All right then. Dustless's eyes turned cold. He fiercely pushed Kayuezuo to the ground and kicked her. How dare you accuse me? Let's see how arrogant you can be. That's what you get for not having the ability to act tough. That's what you get for relying on your rewind cheat. In less than a minute, footprints appeared on Keiichi Subaru's face. Dustless didn't show any mercy. Every time he stepped on Keiichi Subaru's face, a deep red footprint would appear. Damn it, stop. Amelia couldn't stand it anymore. She was kind by nature. How could she tolerate Dustless bullying the weak like this? Stop, Amelia. At this moment, Parker suddenly flew out and stood in front of Amelia. Parker, aren't you close to Lord Pliagen? Why are you stopping me now? Amelia was confused. Parker and Lord Pliagen had argued before. These are 2 different things. Parker shook his head. Looking at Kayuezuo, who was being beaten up, his eyes revealed a hint of coldness. He explained, Lord Pliagen is actually being merciful by not killing someone who is countless times stronger than him. Every strong person has their own dignity, who can tolerate being challenged and accused by a weak ant. So, it's not a bad thing to let Lord Pliagen suffer. This way he will be able to see things clearly. This seems to be true. Amelia tilted her head and nodded. He knew that he wasn't as strong as Dustless, yet he still went to challenge him. Who could he blame for being beaten up? He was lucky that he wasn't killed. In fact, it was worth mentioning that Dustless also wanted to kill Kayatsuki Subaru. The key was that this guy's death return was too powerful. He could be resurrected even if he was killed. It was useless, so it was better to torture him physically. It's so lively here. Kayuezuo's scream attracted the attention of the crowd. Many people were watching silently. After all, Dustless was too cruel. Kayuezuo's face was bloody and his eyes were bleeding. Of course, there were also those who were bold enough to walk over in a grandiose manner. This guy seems to be. Dustless sensed that he was being targeted. He immediately looked up and saw a woman with a pretty face and a hot body walking over slowly. Got Hunter Alusa? This name suddenly popped up in Dustless's mind. He frowned and walked up to Amelia. He reminded her, Girl, this woman is dangerous. You better be careful. Is she as dangerous as you? Amelia looked at Dustless calmly. Hearing this, Dustless was speechless. He moved the corner of his mouth, but in the end, he remained silent. He had repeatedly insulted Kayuezuo. This girl probably hated him very much. She was only talking to him now out of basic courtesy. However, he still kindly reminded her, Anyway, be careful. This woman has a dangerous nickname, Gut Hunter. Amelia still looked at Dustless indifferently and didn't say anything. It was enough to show that she didn't like Dustless. Handsome guy, how should I address you? Alusa walked over slowly and looked at Dustless's face. She smiled and asked, but her eyes were full of vigilance. She didn't see Dustless appearing behind Kayuezuo in a flash. His speed was extremely fast. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2288. Goodbye. I'll leave now. Don't worry, I promise I won't appear in front of you again. The colorless king fled frantically. After escaping from the gates of hell, he cherished his life even more. Swish, swish, swish. His body turned into a dazzling light and disappeared into the vast sky. Someone as powerful as Dustless could easily destroy his confidence. How terrifying would he be when he was serious? Thinking of this, the colorless king felt a chill down his spine. Is the body cold? Turning his head to look at Toshiro, who had closed his eyes, Dustless left decisively. After all, this guy's death had nothing to do with him, so there was nothing to feel guilty about. Moreover, in the original work, this guy was killed by the colorless king. Let them take revenge on the colorless king. Anyway, the video recorded the murderer, so Dustless didn't have to worry about anything. As for the force behind Toshiro, he was one of its members. There were many people in the organization and most of them were gangsters. They were extremely violent and arrogant. The person who led them was the Red King Zhou Fengzuan. Now that Toshiro was dead, this group of people would definitely not let it go. They would fight the colorless king to the death. Forget it, I'll talk about the future in the future. For now, I'll find a place to fill my stomach. I'm hungry too. Dustless lowered his head and looked around. Then he saw a restaurant in the distance and walked over. Meow meow meow. Just as Dustless left, a cute cat with pure white fur suddenly walked out from the darkness. After looking at the bloody scene, it didn't stay any longer and followed Dustless's footsteps. As for the Izona Society, it only took a few more glances. About an hour later. Where should I go? I can't always wander around, right? Late at night, Dustless was in a dilemma. He sat alone on a park bench, staring at the stars in the sky. He was in a daze, bored out of his mind. Beside him was a plastic bag full of various snacks. Meow meow meow. Suddenly, a white kitten slowly walked over. It looked at the food in the bag, but it seemed to be very afraid of Dustless. It didn't dare to get close. Its voice was very pitiful, but it sounded more like a spoiled child. It's the middle of the night. I didn't expect a cat to keep me company. Dustless smiled bitterly and sighed. He immediately threw a few bags of snacks to the white kitten. The kitten was extremely smart. It raised its paw and tore the bags into pieces. What a smart kitten. Dustless was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he looked at the night sky in boredom, thinking about where to go next. Continuing to wander was not a good idea. Meow 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 meow. The kitten seemed to think that Dustless was not a bad person. She suddenly jumped into Dustless's arms and looked at him eagerly. Out of the corner of her eyes, she peeked at the snacks in the bag. Up to you. Dustless said casually as he stroked the white kitten's hair. Gotcha. The kitten's eyes lit up. It seemed to understand Dustless's words. She raised her paw and tore the closed bag of snacks with great familiarity. She began to eat heartily. It seemed that she was starving. About 10 minutes later, the white kitten finished all the snacks. She laid lazily in Dustless's arms and made strange noises. This world is really strange. Even cats can King burp. Dustless complained with a speechless face. In the end, he left, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The kitten seemed to be intelligent. Her eyes looked at Dustless's back. After hesitating for a while, she finally followed Dustless's footsteps. Just like that, one person gradually disappeared under the night sky. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The white kitten's 2 small feet were abnormally strong. With a light jump, she easily jumped onto Dustless's shoulder. Immediately, she lay down on all fours peacefully. She narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. She looked like she was enjoying herself and licked the corner of her mouth from time to time. Dustless didn't say anything when he saw this. The corners of his mouth raised into a thought-provoking arc. He hummed a little tune. He had already vaguely guessed something and understood the identity of this cat. It wasn't an ordinary kitten. Kitten, you should be able to understand me, right? Dustless looked at the kitten on his shoulder with a smile. Then he suddenly held her in his hands. The white kitten was silent. She looked into Dustless's deep eyes and finally nodded. Very good. No matter what kind of creature you are, you have to be honest to be likable. Dustless nodded in satisfaction. You should be able to change into a human's appearance, right? The white kitten was completely stunned when she heard this. She looked at Dustless in surprise. His bright eyes seemed to be able to see through all her secrets. She looked at Dustless's eyes warily. After discovering that he wasn't hostile, she finally nodded again. It seems that my luck isn't bad. A beauty took the initiative to throw herself into my arms. Under the cold night sky, the cold wind raged. Dustless smiled as if he was trying to find joy in the midst of bitterness. After all, the white kitten's human appearance was that of a well-developed girl. Bang! Suddenly, a large amount of white mist appeared in front of Dustless. The white kitten in his hands also disappeared. It was obvious that she had disappeared. Immediately after, a white naked body fell from the sky. Dustless subconsciously reached out and hugged her. A rich fragrance rushed into his ears and nose. Dustless couldn't help but be a little dazed. Fortunately, it was late at night and there was no one around. Moreover, no one could see her body. Otherwise, she would really be exposed. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2289. Dustless's face darkened. He hurriedly took off his coat and put it on Kitty as fast as lightning. He looked at the naive young girl in annoyance. "You brat, I only asked you if you can turn into a human, but you... If I'm an inexperienced pervert, you'll be in trouble." Dustless scolded in annoyance. "The point is you're not. Your eyes are very clean. You're not a bad person." The young girl's voice was crisp and sweet, making people enjoy listening to it. It was soft and made people feel relaxed. "Are you planning to follow me?" Dustless looked at the young girl and said helplessly, "To tell you the truth, let alone you, even I don't have a fixed place to stay. Are you sure you want to wander around with me?" "Yes, yes, yes." Kitty nodded her head vigorously and smiled. "If I'm with you, no one will bully me and I'll have food to eat. You're an outsider. It's good enough that you don't bully others." Dustless scratched the young girl's nose, and the two of them left together. "What's your name?" Mao innocently asked, her sparkling and translucent eyes twinkling. "Me. Just call me Dustless." Dustless answered casually. After Kitty heard that, she almost made Dustless fall down. "Then I'll call you Little Wu from now on," Kitty subconsciously said as her slender white fingers touched her chin. Oh. Wu Chen's face was resolute. If he was called Little Wu, wouldn't his illustrious reputation be ruined? Absolutely not. There was no room for discussion. "All right, you're familiar with this city, right?" Dustless was afraid that Kitty would be troubled by this question, so he quickly changed the topic. "I'm planning to find a job. Do you have any recommendations?" "A job?" After Dustless said that, Kitty immediately lowered her head and pondered. She asked in surprise, "With your strength, there's no need for you to work. You can... I know what you want to say, but I've already decided. Although work is boring, idling at home is even more boring. After a long time, my body will rust." Dustless opened his mouth to explain. Suddenly, he remembered the few worlds he had been in and the few times he had been a teacher, so he decided, "Let's pick up my old profession and go to a nearby school to be a teacher." Not long after Dustless and Mauer left, the members of Veda Wullo rushed to the place where Tatora had been killed. Lying in a pool of blood, his body was already cold. He had no feeling at all. When he died, his eyes were open as if they were filled with unwillingness. "Mr. Tatara." The members of Dowullo lowered their heads to look at Toburiyoshi, who was lying in a pool of blood. Some of them even had tears flowing out of their eyes. It was obvious that Toburiyoshi was very popular in this violent organization. "This is a video camera?" Kusanagi Izumo looked at the video camera that fell to the side, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. After looking at it again and again, he was overjoyed. "Take Totora's body back and bury him. He won't die in vain. The bastard who killed him won't let him go easily. We must use his blood as a sacrifice to Totora." Kusanagi Izumo shouted, and his whole body was covered in crimson flames. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye 3 days later, the news of the death of Totora, a senior cadre of Dowullo, swept the entire city in a short time. The entire Dowullo was in an uproar, and people were wantonly searching for the murderer. As for the colorless king and Dustless, they also became the focus of attention. But Dustless knew nothing about these trivial matters. He and Mao rented a luxurious villa. Anyway, Dustless has the ability of king's treasure. He lacks everything except money. He can squander it wantonly and live the life of a nouveau riche like a nouveau riche. The middle of the Reed Academy is the closest school nearby. Because of the relationship with Sharingan, Dustless successfully controlled the principal and got the position of a teacher. Why is it a healthcare teacher again? In front of the healthcare teacher's office, Dustless looked unlucky. He used to be a healthcare teacher in other worlds. It was really inconvenient for him to have intimate contact with female students in some places. But Dustless searched the memory of the principal. What this school lacks is only a healthcare teacher. Creak. Just as he pushed the door open, a few students with anxious expressions came into view. "I'm the new healthcare teacher, what's the matter?" Looking at the anxious girls, Dustless frowned and asked. Suddenly he found a silver-haired boy lying on the hospital bed. Dustless walked over and his pupils suddenly shrank. "Isn't this the kid from Izona Club?" Dustless was quite surprised. He didn't expect to meet this kid here. He couldn't help but guess in his heart, but who is this guy? Is he the colorless king or the first king, the silver king Adolf K. Weitzman? Quietly looking at Izona Club, Dustless pondered. In the original work, Mao modified the memory of Izona Club, causing this guy to not remember who he is. Now that I took Mauer away, this guy's memory is intact. So, the current him is the Silver King Adolf K. Weitzman? As for the original colorless king, he was probably scared to death by Dustless and left this body long ago. So if he guessed correctly, the Silver King should be the one controlling the personality of this body. After that, Wu Chen asked where this group of students found the Izona Club. Everyone's answer was also very simple. When they found the club, they had fainted in the school. As for where they came from, no one knew. All of you can go back. After a while, Dustless ordered them to leave. He didn't care about Izona Club. This guy's body had the Silver King, and his ability was not taken away. He could be immortal and float without gravity. Even if Dustless left him alone, he would wake up on his own. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2290. In a flash it was almost noon. Dustless didn't have the skills to cook, so he had no choice but to go to the restaurant with Mao Air to have a full meal. During this period, Dustless repeatedly ordered Mao Air to put on her clothes. Only then did she put on her clothes reluctantly, as if she was suffering a lot. Dustless could only laugh dryly. But when they came out of the restaurant, tragedy suddenly struck. They were surrounded by a group of fierce-looking people, each of them holding a fighting weapon like a club in their hands. "What do you want?" Dustless asked with a frown. This group of people looked fierce, and at a glance, he knew that they weren't good people. They also had various tattoos. The most conspicuous thing was that Dustless also saw the Bark Willow logo on each of them, and he understood the purpose of this group of people in his heart. These people are not good people. Dustless couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Mao Air seemed to have noticed the hostility of these people and hid behind Dustless very timidly. Immediately, she exposed her head and angrily rebuked, "You have found the wrong person, Dustless. Dustless is not the person you are looking for." "Little girl, you changed your words quickly." Dustless rolled his eyes at Mao Air. Hearing the name Little Wu, Dustless had goosebumps. "But she is right. You have found the wrong person. Get out of the way." Looking at the eyes of several people, Dustless said calmly, You think we will get out of the way just because you said so? You don't put our Bark Willow in your eyes." An extremely arrogant tone suddenly came. After the group of hooligans heard the voice, they immediately got out of the way. Then a young man dressed in a non-mainstream way came into view. He was riding a skateboard confidently, with an unruly expression on his cold face. At first glance, one could tell that he was a delinquent young man. He was not old, estimated to be around 20 years old. "How did Mr. Duo Liang die? You have to explain it to me clearly." The young man with the skateboard looked at Dustless with hostility. He held a baseball bat and looked extremely arrogant. The first impression he gave was that he was the type who would start a fight if there was a disagreement. Another familiar face. Looking at the newcomer in surprise, Wu Chen recognized this person. "If I remember correctly, your name is Hadamiko, right? You know me?" Hadamiko was slightly taken aback and immediately said with a deep face, "Who allowed you to call me by my name?" Dustless's expression changed slightly. A sharp light flashed in his eyes and his tone turned cold. "If I don't call you by your name, what should I call you? Do you want me to call you Tom, Dick, or Harry?" Dustless originally had no intention to lower himself to the same level as this Chinibi youth. However, the other party was not tactful and full of hostility. He did not understand the principle of keeping a low profile at all. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to be polite. "You're courting death." Sure enough, this guy really belonged to the conceited and arrogant type. He stepped hard on the ground with his right foot and slid the skateboard over quickly. The bat had already smashed toward Wu Chen's head. "You're itching for a beating. Then I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your family." Dustless said to himself, his hands clenched into fists. "Shio shio shio." Seeing that the bat was about to hit Dustless's head in a flash, a black shadow rushed over and blocked in front of Dustless. With a clang sound, a long sword was unsheathed, and the words "Fu Jian, draw your sword" could be heard. Bang! Hadamiko's bat hit the long sword, and the rebound force made both of them take a few steps back. The person who suddenly stood up to support Dustless was obviously on the same level as him. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Another acquaintance, Fu Jian or Rubigu. Silver glanced at the person. Of course, he didn't think that he was here to help him. The two of them didn't get along well, and maybe he helped because he was annoyed by Hadamiko. "The one in blue? Get out of my way, monkey." After seeing her old enemy, Hadamiko shouted angrily. "Meirua, so it's you?" Fu Jian pointed at Wu Chen with an arrogant expression, as if he was announcing his possession. He then said loudly, "Our leader wants this person. You guys Fei Wulua can get lost now. Dustless looked at this scene quietly, and couldn't help but laugh in his heart. What did this group of clowns think of him as? A commodity that anyone could snatch? Or a passerby? They could pick it up and snatch it at will. However, Dustless didn't make a move. He looked calm and resigned to his fate. He just watched silently and his eyes were fixed on Hadamiko. The reason why he didn't make a move was that he wanted to see why this guy was looking for trouble with him. If he couldn't hold back and crippled him, no one would ask questions. Your leader? Hearing this, Hadamiko smiled proudly. What a coincidence, this guy is also the person our boss is looking for. So, monkey, you should go back. Miko, you don't have the final say. Fujian Arubigu also insisted. The two of them looked at each other with hostility, and there was a possibility of a fight at any time. Cough cough cough. I'm not interested in your grudges, but I still want to interrupt and ask. Dustless looked at the two of them and saw that they were about to fight. Suddenly he asked, why are you looking for me? Toshiro was dead, but it had nothing to do with him. The one who killed him was King Colorless. Dustless didn't offend Fujian Arubigu, but he still became their prey. I just don't like you. Looking at Dustless, Hadamiko seemed to be joking, but she also seemed to be serious. Clap clap clap. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned for a moment and immediately clapped his hands. His eyes were filled with coldness in an instant. What a coincidence, you guys have been chattering for a long time, and I also don't like you guys. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2291. I just don't like you. Looking at Dustless, Hadamiko seemed to be joking but also seemed to be serious. Clap clap clap. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned and immediately applauded. His eyes were cold in an instant. What a coincidence. You've been chattering for a long time. I don't like you either. Dustless was speechless. Originally, he thought that this group of people had always been arrogant and young, so he was too lazy to argue with them and talk nonsense. Who would have thought that Hadamiko was so arrogant? If someone said to you that he didn't like you and wanted to beat you up, what would you do? Everyone would be irritated, not to mention Dustless's bad temper. Don't like me? Hearing this, Hadamiko was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. She was enraged. She gnashed her teeth and said, Mr. Zune said that he would catch you alive, so I won't hurt you. Now take back your words, and apologize to me. Hadamiko was really angry. As a member of the Red Clan, everyone had their own pride, but now she was despised by Dustless. How could she not be angry? What if I refuse? Dustless asked indifferently, you can be barbaric and unreasonable, why can't I? You can be angry with others, but I can't be angry with you? What? Dustless maintained his composure from beginning to end. Even if he was already fuming in his heart, he still maintained absolute calm. Why? At this moment, not to mention Hadamiko, even Fujian Yuigu sneered with a contemptuous expression. Of course it's because of this. As soon as his voice fell, he raised the long sword in his hand, full of pride. That's right. Hadamiko, who usually fought with Fujian Yuigu, decisively stood on Fujian Yuigu's side and said righteously, of course it's because of strength. With strength you can beat me and I don't care. After all, it's because I'm not as good as you. So, now you come with me and apologize. Miko, this guy is valued by our leader. Don't even think about taking him away. The two of them only talked for a few seconds and then began to fight again. Fujian Yuigu's face was gloomy. What did you say? Say it again if you dare. I'll smash your head. Hadamiko glared at Fujian Yuigu, her eyes spitting fire as if she wanted to melt him. You two guys. Dustless could be silent, but Mao could not stand it. After seeing Dustless's strength, he knew how terrible Dustless was. Not to mention these two minions, even if Red King Zhou Fangzuan and Blue King Zhong Xiangru came, they would not be able to deal with Dustless. Hurry up and apologize or Dustless will beat you to death. You two will be beaten black and blue, and you won't even recognize your leader. The cat bared its fangs and brandished its claws as a warning. However, it hid behind Dustless from the beginning to the end, as if it was a fox borrowing the tiger's might. The two who were still quarreling instantly turned their heads and looked at Dustless and sneered, just by this guy? His arms and legs are thin, and he's not a member of other clans and he wants to beat us black and blue? Ridiculous, this joke is really tasteless. You're overestimating yourself. Fujian Yuigu also looked down on Dustless. You two are too weak, Dustless won't even bother to fight. Mao continued, unwilling to be outdone, otherwise he could kill the two of you with a single finger. Don't get carried away. Hearing this, the two's faces changed and they looked at Dustless with an unfriendly face and clenched their fists. Perhaps if they did not order Dustless to be captured alive, they would have already beaten him up to vent their anger. You little girl. Turning his head and patting Mao's head, Dustless asked in a bad mood, are you helping me out or are you deliberately causing trouble for me? Because of you they are becoming more and more hostile to me. Who asked them to be so arrogant? They are obviously not your match, but they are still so arrogant. Mao pouted and said with her cheeks pouted, looking very playful and cute. Hearing this, Dustless smiled and immediately turned his head to look at the two. It's useless to apologize. You've successfully infuriated me. Although Mr. Zun wants to capture you alive and not kill you, he can do other things such as giving you a good beating. At this point, Hadamiko's face suddenly turned ferocious. Beating me up? Dustless laughed and immediately said bluntly, boy, you should have seen the video, right? You clearly know that the murderer is King Colorless, but you still want to cause trouble for me, which can only mean one thing. You hate me. Looking at Hadamito's hateful eyes, Dustless said bluntly, you hate me for having superpowers and why it wasn't my head that blocked the bullet for Toshiro. Am I right? The thoughts of violent organizations are really hard to understand. Hearing this, Toshiro didn't say anything, but he thought so in his heart. If Dustless didn't have superpowers and was just an ordinary person, then the bullet would have shattered his body instead of passing through and shattering Toshiro. On the contrary, Toshiro wouldn't have died. It's useless even if you apologize, Mr. Toshiro's death has a lot to do with you. Hadamito looked at Dustless coldly. No. Dustless shook his head and his eyes instantly became extremely terrifying like a hungry beast. That oppressive gaze frightened everyone, as if they were being stared at by a furious king, and their whole body trembled in fear. I should be the one saying that, you have successfully angered me, and it's useless to apologize, no one can save you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2292. You're courting death. Hearing that Dustless was so arrogant, Yadamiwa could not tolerate it anymore. She waved her bat and smashed it at him without hesitation. Since Zhou Fengzuan's order was to capture Dustless alive, Yadamiwa did not go too far. Instead she held back a little. Bang! The bat smashed toward Dustless's head, but a big hand came and easily caught the iron bat. Ka. Dustless exerted a little force and the bat, which was as thick as a human arm, suddenly collapsed and shattered like a rotten wood. This guy, is he really strong? He doesn't look like it. He's just a gigolo. Looking at the shattered bat, Yadamiwa stared at Dustless's cold face and frowned. She felt like she had kicked an iron plate. Let's see how strong you are. However, Yadamiwa was a gangster after all, and Wailua was also such a violent organization. He was not very smart and liked to solve problems with his fists. Therefore he gently slid his skateboard and suddenly flew toward Dustless. His fist went straight toward Dustless's head. Trash. Seeing this, Dustless grinned and stared at Yadamiwa. He said indifferently, Mokutan? Ka. The ground burst open and then, a thick tree came out from the ground and changed according to Dustless's will. The tree, which was thicker than a human, condensed into an arm and punched toward Yadamiwa. You're underestimating me. Seeing this, Yadamiwa was not afraid at all. Her fist was covered with dark red flames and she also punched out. Naive. Wuchen couldn't help but cover his eyes. He didn't want to see the appearance of Hadamiwa being beaten up. This kid still had to contend with Mokutan. Although the power was unlimitedly weakened, it was not something he could contend with. Bang! The power of the wood-released giant fist was too great. It effortlessly sent Hada Misaki flying and she fell miserably more than 10 meters away. Bang! Ka. The glass on the opposite street had been smashed by him, and Hadamiwa was lying among the glass shards in a sorry state. You can beat up Meru? Looks like I underestimated you. Fujian Bigu looked at Dustless with a gloomy expression. He was shocked. At first he thought that this guy was just a pretty boy. His skin was white and he was even prettier than a woman. He was definitely a flowery martial artist. Who would have thought that he would be so terrifying after being provoked? Come. Dustless laughed and waved his hand. He sneered, I want to see how you guys are going to beat me up. To be honest, I really want to be beaten up. Just you wait. Hearing this, Fujian was enraged. He held the scabbard with his right arm and said in a hoarse voice, "Fu Jian pull," swish, swish, swish. Before he could completely pull out his sword, a flash of light came head-on, and Dustless's figure instantly appeared in front of Fujiaku, his right hand on his forehead and his thumb gently flicked. Bang! This seemingly casual attack caused Fu Jianyuigu to be severely injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his body was sent flying. Ka. A deep hole was formed on the wall more than 10 meters away from him. He was lying in the hole with a pale face, unable to move his body. How can he be so strong? Fujiaku was stunned. He had never dreamed that he would be defeated in seconds, and his opponent was not even a king. An outsider? Why haven't I heard of this person before? Even if he is not a king, his strength is enough to compete with a king. Yadamiwa, who was arrogant a moment ago, took a deep breath and could not help but regret. The order given to him by Zhou Fangzuan was to capture Wu Qin alive. To put it bluntly, he was to bring Wu Qin back in one piece. However, at this moment he had taken the initiative to provoke the other party. Provoking such a powerful enemy seemed to have brought great trouble to Wang Wulua. What's wrong? Don't have the strength to stand up? Dustless walked in front of the two. His aura was calm and he was not affected in the slightest. However, Yadamiwa and Fujiaku were both panting heavily. They had obviously reached their limits. Who are you? Yadamiwa looked at Dustless in fear. Her tone was much more respectful. Her indifferent face was filled with endless coldness as if she was looking at an ant. The human heart is really ugly. Quietly looking down at Yadamiwa, Dustless completely ignored her ugly expression. I didn't mean to go against you guys before, but you guys took an inch and wanted a mile. Why, now that I've shown my strength and got beaten up, do you know that some people are not to be trifled with? What a wretch. Facing Dustless's sarcasm, Yadamiwa was embarrassed. However, Dustless did not go against them before. It was her who kept nagging and refused to let Dustless go. She wanted to make a big deal out of a small matter, which eventually led to this situation. Do you want to continue? Looking down at Yadamiwa and Fujiaku, Dustless said indifferently, small fries like you, 1 or 2, 10 or 100 are actually the same. It won't change anything. Don't be too arrogant. Hearing this, both of them were angry. They didn't know where they got the courage to attack from. It was as if a small universe had erupted. They attacked from different directions at the same time. You guys can be arrogant, why can't I? Dustless asked calmly. At the same time, both of his hands were aimed at the two of them. A ray of light quickly formed and shot straight out. Laser. Puchi. The speed of the light was too fast. Yadamiwa and Fujiaku did not even have time to react before the light beam directly penetrated their bodies. It was only half an inch away from the position of their hearts. Plop. Both of them fell to the ground. Although Dustless was merciful and did not take their lives were already hanging by a thread. If no one cared, they would definitely die. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2293. Dustless smiled but did not say anything. As long as this guy did not provoke him, he would not be so bored as to argue with Keiichisubaru. At the end of the day, he was just a piece of trash. Other than the skill Death Return, which was pretty good, his combat power was close to zero. However, Keiichisubaru always used his ability to challenge Dustless. He deserved to be beaten up. Well, although it's too much to say this at this time, please return the badge you stole to me. It's very important to me. Amelia walked up to Ferret and said apologetically. Looking closely, Master Rum was sweating profusely and grimacing in pain. There was a shocking wound on his abdomen. His intestines were cut open by Ilusa. It was a horrible sight. Even his internal organs were cut into pieces. With such a serious injury, there was no doubt that he would die. The injury is quite serious. I thought it was just a minor injury. Dustless walked over slowly and frowned. Give you the badge? Hearing this, Ferret suddenly stopped sobbing and said coldly, if it weren't for you uninvited guests, Master Rum wouldn't have been killed. Hey, are you kidding me? It was you who stole Amelia's badge. Is it wrong for us to come and ask for the badge? Her brows tightly knitted, Keiichisubaru asked with displeasure. But it's a fact that you guys killed Master Rum. Ferret still gritted his teeth and said with a face full of hatred. I'm sorry. This is indeed our responsibility. Amelia blamed herself and apologized. If they hadn't appeared, perhaps Ilusa would have left with the badge after paying the money. But because Amelia, the owner of the badge, had come, Ilusa had turned hostile. Hee. Keiichi Subaru suddenly thought of something and smiled wretchedly. She pretended to sigh and said, "Sigh? Wuxian, sometimes it's not good to be too observant. You see, you brought us here and caused the death of Master Luo Mu. You brat." Dustless could not help but turn his head. He thought that he was shameless enough, but compared to Keiichi Subaru he was not just a little bit worse. Obviously, Keiichi Subaru was deliberately tricking him. "It's you?" It would have been better if he hadn't said anything. The moment he said that, Ferret, who was crying like a pear blossom, glared angrily at Dustless. "I say, this old man isn't dead yet, right? You look at him as if I killed him." Dustless felt helpless. Soon after, he said meaningfully, "If it wasn't for me, I'm afraid that all of you would have died." "This is also the truth." Amelia nodded. Ilusa's strength was extremely powerful. If they were to rely on the few of them, they would definitely die. If it wasn't for Dustless taking action in time, they would definitely end up like Master Ram and be cut off by that female pervert. "Humph, you're twisting words and forcing logic." But Kaiwa Subaru didn't buy it. She sneered, "If you didn't bring us here, none of this would have happened. It's all your fault. You killed Master Luo Mu." Kaiwa Subaru's voice was filled with tears as she complained about Dustless with hatred. To Kaiwa Subaru, Dustless was her mortal enemy. Because before the return of death, she had been brutally killed by Dustless several times. Therefore she hated Dustless to the core. Therefore Kaiwa Subaru would not let go of any opportunity to take revenge or frame him. "I say, you're crying so sadly. This old man can't be your biological father, right?" Dustless teased. His words made Kaiwa Subaru's face turn green with anger. "Besides, this old man is still breathing." "Who said that he's dead?" Dustless asked indifferently. "But his internal organs have been destroyed. Even his heart has been split. Even if he's still alive, how long can he last?" Amelia shook her head and said, "This kind of injury was too serious. Even she was helpless." "Hee hee," Kaiwa Subaru laughed sinisterly and said with disdain, "Maybe to Dustless this kind of injury is not worth mentioning. He can easily treat it." "Boy, you've been talking so much nonsense. You're right this time. I can indeed save Master Luo Mu. It's a piece of cake." Dustless looked calm and confident. "Ah, are you kidding me?" Kaiwa Subaru was stunned and sneered. "His heart is destroyed. Can you save Master Luo Mu? Stop dreaming. If you can revive him, I'll call you Big Brother, no, Grandpa." "Okay, my good grandson." Dustless grinned, full of ridicule. "I haven't done it yet and you're already calling me Grandpa. I'm flattered." "You bastard, how dare you take advantage of me?" Kaiwa Subaru was so angry that he clenched his fists tightly. His knuckles cracked. "What's wrong? Are you itching for a beating?" Dustless was stunned. A strong killing intent rushed towards Kaiwa Subaru. Phew! Kaiwa Subaru's body suddenly felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar. His mind was controlled by his emotions. This guy in front of him was unreliable. Challenging him was just asking for humiliation. "Can you really save Master Luo Mu? If you can do it, I can give you the badge." Ferret looked at Dustless nervously with a sincere face. "Dustless." Amelia came over and pulled Dustless's clothes. She said gratefully, "You saved my life. I'm already very grateful to you. But Master Luo Mu." Amelia's voice sank at the end. Although she believed in Dustless's ability, how could he revive Master Luo Mu when his internal organs were destroyed? She could even see that Master Luo Mu's heart was shattered. If I can't save him, I'm your grandpa." Kaiwa Subaru looked at Dustless with hatred and disgust. He did not have a good impression of this bastard who killed him 3 times. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 subscriptions plus updates.